This episode of Scab Talk is brought to you by Lethal Gaming Gear. And welcome back to Scab Talk, everyone. Today's episode, we're going to do our usual news segment, which is going to be pretty short this week. However, in light of that, we got Wipe Speculation, Tarkov Free Market. We're going to be talking about a little bit more of a continuation of last week's economy discussion that we had, which was a lot of fun. We both enjoyed that. We got some surveys from GigaBeef with leveling. Then we got 556 late wipe testing GigaBeef's been cooking on. And then finally to wrap up, I got some very exciting games. Some similar genres, some very not similar, but all very exciting stuff I can't wait to share with everyone.
Excellent. Well, that all sounds very good, doesn't it? It all sounds very good. This week has been quiet. There's no two ways to say it, really. No, Nikita. I don't think Nikita has actually posted at all. He's probably, in the trenches doing whatever, is required before a wipe. The only person... So, the last post that we had was the 17th of July, and that was the clipping of headgear. The only person who has actually been posting is Dimitri, and he's posted two different things. One of them was yet another random picture. So now he's posting like a few bits and pieces from, I guess, Rigi. Like, we don't really know exactly what it is, whether it's like in-game stuff, because there could be some of these films that make it into the 1.0 for terminal and that kind of stuff, which would be like really sick. If they intended to be a single player thing, they could record some of the sickest like in-game cutscenes of all time, because they have the tech to do it. Maybe this is why they did the raid series all along. Who knows? So the first one, he just said cooking, and it's just them doing something. It's hard to even know. I don't even know what they're up to here, but they're like busy doing whatever. There's like maybe like, is that broken window or is that like spider web window? I'm not really sure. In the background, it's hard to tell. So they could be in a kind of broken building. They've got like, it looks like there's cult symbols on the right hand wall. So they've like marked it up. It's not just like a random building. They're like on set in some way.
Yeah.
Whether that's even just in the office or it's some particular place, or whether it's Rigi, it's kind of hard to know. So they've been obviously busy doing something of that kind anyway. And then the other one was literally just like a random reply. And this is to a post where on this same thread, somebody said, "Info on the wipe is needed, bro. I need to plan my gaming time. Let my girlfriend know I ain't seeing her for a while when the wipe drops." Which, I know a lot of the community like is so dedicated. There's actually how people are joking, but like they actually feel that way as well. It's just like, funny, not really. Actually, can you please tell me? Because like I really need to know. And he said like quite soon. Can't give you an exact date yet. So like where does quite soon fit on the scale of soon to soon? Quite soon. Like it's hard to know exactly where that lies.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Dimitri's been posting other bits and pieces, but only those ones have been relative to, or in relation to Tarkov. There was like a few random bits. One about the Turkish Olympic guy who's like, if you've seen the memes, it's like like everybody else has got like these crazy glasses on and stuff, and they've got like all this specialist equipment, and he's shown up, just got one hand in the pocket, just really, really cool. Everyone's loving that.
Yeah, I saw like apparently in a statement they asked him like, why don't you use these special equipment? He was like, I'm just a natural shooter. Like I don't need special equipment. He's just like
Giga Chad.
Yeah, I love it, dude. And like, oh my god, the meat, like there was like one that's like, I want all of these different. There's like all these screen caps of all the different competitors and like their styles. Like this is like anime protagonist stuff right here. Like you got different. They got the Turkish guy and some of the other people. Like it was great.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's actually like, I think the shooting in particular seems, because I've really not been following the Olympics at all.
Yeah,
but the things that I've seen have all come out of like the shooting competition, because I think the person who won gold was this lady from South Korea as well, and she's like, people are just like, oh, she's also got in like insane presence, whatever. She's like super cool on the camera. She like takes a shot and then just looks at the camera, just like, yeah, whatever. She's like so cool. But at the same time, she's like a mum as well, and in her left hand, like while she's shooting, she's got like her kid's like favorite toy that she asked her to take to the Olympics or whatever. And it's just like, could this person be any better? It's just like the perfect, like most well-rounded thing. It's like wholesome as well as being like super cool. It's like awesome. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's probably the thing. It's probably because of what I look at on Twitter. That's probably why I've seen so much about the shooting in particular, because it's just like that Venn diagram of like Tarkov people, the IRL gun community, and then the like Olympic shooting event, and the fact that there's cool characters appearing out of this thing. It's pretty good.
You know, I find hilarious. I don't know the validity of this, but apparently there wasn't any people representing the U.S. for this, and it's like so comical considering how, like, in general, we're like very like gun heavy. You know,
Yeah.
we love our
I'm
Second
sure.
Amendment rights.
I don't know. I mean, the guns they're strange, aren't they? If you've seen them, the Olympic guns, they're very weird. So I don't know. Maybe something to do with that.
Perhaps.
So yeah, so Dimitri's clearly very busy doing. You know, it probably is like less busy time for him. If you're like a PR person, like pre-wipe, like then maybe that's why he can post a bit more. And Nikita's kind of more like make sure everything's gonna work, because otherwise I'm gonna get the heat again kind of situation. So I don't know. So Dimitri's just been posting a few random things, but it's really slowed down since a couple of weeks ago, which is understandable. I hope that they pick it back up again next wipe. You know, this is the classic cycle of BSG where something happens, the community gets mad, Nikita says I'm sorry, or to that effect ish, and then starts posting more, and the people are like, hey, look at the communication, and then it like kind of wanes and disappears again, and everything just sort of settles back, and then it just goes back into the old way. So I hope that they carry on communicating the way they were. Like having the Nikki leaks is actually pretty fun, and he's got lots of things to say clearly, so it's good. So I don't know. We are going to have to see what happens with all of this stuff. Literally 7 minutes ago, 7 minutes. So we're saying there's no news. Literally 7 minutes ago, a new in-game event has begun. So this is literally like hot off the press. A new in-game event supply and demand has started. Players can access a new mechanic quest line. After completion of the quest line, players will be able to access the global event. After the event's conclusion and following the next wipe, players will be able to barter the most popular weapon builds at mechanics loyalty level 3 and 4. The above mentioned event is only available in PvP. The in-game event is available for completion until August the 6th.
Okay.
So there's some global event after this quest line, however hard that is, I don't know. After the event's conclusion and following the next wipe, players will be able to barter the most popular weapon builds at mechanics and loyalty level 3 and 4. Only PvP, yes, that's correct. I wonder what that means. I guess so it depends on what the global event is, so it's hard to speculate. So if the global event is, pick a certain weapon and use it to get kills, maybe we're gonna unlock a barter for the things that people use the most with the global quest line. Yeah, depends what this global quest line is. I'm gonna open up the game. I don't know whether it's actually in yet, but this is not looking good for me, by the way. Just given that there's an event now. We'll talk about that in 2 seconds. I'll open up the game and see. Somebody said in chat as I get it open, it says it's get kills with like 7 different calibers. I'll open the game and we can read it as is in a second.
Okay.
But this is going to be, this is interesting. It's going to depend on how intensive this quest line is. Actually, when did they say it finishes? Until August
the
6th
at 10 a.m. BST.
Okay, so it's until my morning and early morning US on the Tuesday. Interesting.
Yeah, but don't
interesting.
And okay, I'm jumping ahead.
and it says quest line, so it might just be this and then nothing. So we'll see. I don't know. All right, the game. It does take quite a long time for this game to load up. I'll tell you all about the quest in 5 seconds. By the time the cast goes out, everybody will know what this is, I'm sure. But yeah, I guess we could start blending into talking about wipe then, because that's very relevant to this and when it's going to be, and nobody knows. Apparently they've changed the tweet and they've removed the PvP part. So this is like live. This is like live news updating. Yeah, they've removed the PvP section.
Okay. So you're right. Yeah, they just did that. Why?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Maybe they changed their mind. I don't really know.
Yeah.
Okay, so mechanic. Gunsmith special order. Hello, friend. Things have been a little bumpy for me lately. Are we raising the price of my products and services from today until I can solve some pressing matters? Oh, this is actually just gunsmith. Modify an M4A1 to comply with the given specs. Okay, so I guess maybe you have to do that first, and then you get a few other things, and then you have to get kills with the calibers. Maybe someone's already completed this. I mean, to be honest, it should only take you a couple of minutes to finish. Anyway, a mercenary friend of mine is putting together a team to raid the underground lab. He needs reliable firepower. Can you help? I see you know as much about ARs as I do, so I thought I'd entrust this to you. I need an M4, no more than 300 total recoil, ergonomics no less than 70. Not easy, I know. Now be sure to put an EOTech XPS 30 on it, since the client refuses to use any other scope. And you get a Bitcoin, you get 2 packs of 100 M905, and a small bit of rep. Okay. All right. So, that aside, we'll see what the rest of the quest line looks like over the next day or two. Yeah, and so people are saying the next quest is eliminate enemies with different calibers, because that should only take people a few minutes to fix. Maybe I'll do it in the background or something. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to do that, because maybe I can make a video. But this kind of brings into question, like, when is the wipe going to be? Lots of people obviously speculating about when is the wipe going to be. We don't really know. The only thing that we know from Battlestate Games is early August. That's all they've said. And this soon thing from Dimitri, which we just doesn't really tell us anything. Now, depending on who you are, early means different things to you. I remember some, like, people in chat were speculating when I was streaming yesterday. I see early August as like the first half of August and late August as the second half of August. But some people are like, if it doesn't happen in the first 3 days, then it's not early August anymore. And I'm like, really? That's a very like stringent. Yeah, but it depends on what you think about early August. I don't really know. And so a lot of people, based on that, was guessing that if it wasn't like right at the beginning, then it would be on, say, the 8th. And for me, I think as time rumbles on, I was like, the 8th is the most probable, but obviously if we get through the weekend with no event, then the 8th end is not really in scope. Like, if they could force something through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, wipe on Thursday or Friday, but like, I don't think they want to wipe on a Friday, because it's just like a tech nightmare if you do that. And yeah, so the fact that there's an event now kind of puts the 8th into question again, like, or much more so than it was before. It kind of makes you think, okay, if this is going to like follow on from here, but this thing goes until the 6th, so they might overlap like other events over the top of it or something. I mean, it's hard to know. Like, the BSG playbook is different every time. Can't really read into it previously. You can't look at the previous ones and read into that for the future ones. So there's lots of been speculation recently about the 15th as well, 8th versus 15th. Obviously, everyone's centered around the Thursday thing. But it could be honestly, it could be any day, really, like the 6th, 7th, 8th, or like 13th, 14th, 15th. We think they probably won't wipe on the weekend, and probably won't wipe on the Monday. Could do like a Sunday or something, but it's hard to know. So it's either, people are thinking either next week or the week after. That's kind of like, that's the guesses, I would say. Those are the guesses. If we look at like previous wipes, so the last one in December, the 27th for patch 14, that was a Wednesday. Then the August the 10th one prior to that was actually a Thursday. So the 10th of August was the Thursday. The December before that was a Wednesday again. And then the June in 2022 was a Tuesday. So like, just going back, it was Wednesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Sunday, Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday, Tuesday, and then lots of Thursdays. But that was around 2018. So that was a long time ago at this point. So, you know, it's really anybody's guess. As to when it's going to be. So I think that's the thing for me. Like, if this event looks like it's going to continue on through the week and is like back to back to back to back, then the 8th is very much like in play, which would suck for me. If that doesn't happen and it gets pushed a bit further, then it'll probably roll over that weekend and then maybe happen in the week of the 15th. You know, it could happen either like the 13th, the 14th, or the 15th. There's no reason why it couldn't be on any of those days. In my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really hard to say one way or the other. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's always Thursday, right? All reliable Thursday.
Yeah. And so that's why people usually center their thoughts around the Thursday. So we will see. I just really don't want it to happen on the 8th. I really don't. It's going to be so annoying if it does. It's going to be such a pain. It's literally like because usually they'll patch this stuff at like 10 in the morning. And then it comes up. I mean, to be fair, I think the white patches now, because they're patching Arena as well, but not PvE, they usually take 6 hours, 7 hours, I think. Or maybe even up to 8 hours. So if they patch it at 9 a.m. my time. Or sometimes they do 7. Like, it really depends, but yeah, it could be like early afternoon. But early afternoon is like literally the time I'm supposed to be going off for this event. So it's like the worst possible day. It's like overlaps like 1 to 1, right into the back of when I'm supposed to be going off for the weekend, long weekend from Thursday to Sunday, which sucks. But yeah, so this event makes it a lot more likely, I think, that it's the 8th, which is annoying. We will see.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like because they typically would do like free labs and like everything's 1 ruble, right? So
Yeah,
like,
in like the day or two, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it seems possible. I mean, the interesting thing that kind of caught my eye was they mention in the dialogue description of the first quest that you read that there's like something tied in with labs. Like, I wonder if like at the end of this event, then it's like all of a sudden, oh my god, labs blew open, it's free.
Yeah.
Maybe, I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe like the 7th or maybe the 6th, rather, that will be like free labs. And then maybe the 8th or 7th will be like 1 ruble. It's possible. But I just feel like we should be due for like a podcast before then, like something, right? So unless they plan on, announcing something Monday.
I mean, maybe, but we've had the Tarkov TV for this wipe already, so that's why I think like maybe not on that, because like people have been asking, oh, so what's coming then and blah blah, and I'm like, well, we kind of know already. Like, we've got the big list of stuff that Nikita's already talked about. There's loads of things that he's already mentioned. Like, if I just open up my Tarkov TV May, it's because it happened in May. I think it's because it happened like
yeah,
kind of
that's
early, and this wipe's gone on
true.
so long. I think that's the reason. People normally imagine
kinda
it's like,
forget
oh, it
about
happens
it.
in May, and then it's like June wipe, so it happens straight away.
Mhm.
Whereas like now it's like, oh, May Tarkov TV, and then August is like 2 extra months. Like, it feels like a long time ago. And a lot of the stuff that they said in this thing, or that Nikita said in here, actually kind of already got done, right? Like, this, it's like hard to remember back actually already. Like, this podcast was done prior to the armor change.
Yeah.
So like, I was reading through some of the notes about it before, and he was like, yeah, the armor system update, like, it's pretty hard to determine how to play it and how to use the armor. There's some RNG going on, and so we're going to simplify it in other ways. And I was just like, oh yeah, this was like pre-armor. This is insane. Like, it's actually not been around for that long. They did Final Raid first and then armor, but if I just look at the like 15 thing, it's like new hideout zones, there's the cult room, and then the mannequins thing. The guns is like the Uzi, the M60, the SR3M. They're updating the Val model, and then the Desert Eagle, mantling and bipods,
man,
like also
yeah.
like putting guns on cover,
Yeah.
and then bipods.
I forgot
Rework
about
factory
this.
location. I know, because it was so long ago, right? And then they're adding tripwires, landmines for AI. There's a boss is coming with tripwires or whatever. Mortar
Map to map
strikes.
travel.
There's map to map travel as an event at the beginning of the new wipe.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some element of like PvP karma because of this new boss, with like sitting in bushes around the extract. You get like lower PvP karma and get hunted down by this new boss. Selecting grenades with like holding down G, like you do with magazines. Same with tactical devices. Armbands on both shoulders. Guns not being 100% in containers. Bunch of technical stuff. Some headset balance. An occlusion with like audio and whatever. Some voice optimizations, and then FPS optimization. That's it really. That's like the very short, 45-second summary of what's coming that we know about. Because after that, it's other things, right? He's talking about TwitchCon San Diego, a big secret event in October, and like LPVO zooming. But that, he said, that's not necessarily coming to the wipe, but hopefully it happens before like the end of the year. And then also this thing of like being able to do something while you're in the queue, like use your stash while you're in the queue. But again, I don't think that's coming with the wipe, unless it comes as a surprise, which it might. But like, yeah, the other things were the stuff that he's like was kind of definite about. So yeah, I don't know. I think we kind of know already what we're gonna get, and it's just because Tarkov TV was so long ago that now it feels like we're due one, even though we actually had one for this wipe, because we were all expecting it to happen probably 1 month, maybe a month and a half later, and instead it's happened like 3 months later, or 3.5 months later. So
this was also kind of like off the back of the Unheard edition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yep.
Because I was actually just like scrolling through Pastili's backlog, and I don't see anything here where he covered Tarkov TV, which is interesting. Like, I don't know unless I missed it. Like I just don't see it
On his YouTube channel, you mean?
on his YouTube channel. Yes, sorry, yeah, YouTube. I mean, I see
Hmm.
like he's got one with the patch notes for 14.9, but that's like a month ago. We're looking more like 2 months ago, and it's just like it's just not here. It's like unheard stuff, and then there's like hardcore arena breakout, and then like
Maybe he
still
didn't cover
hardcore
it. I'm
stuff.
not
Yeah,
sure.
I don't think he covered it, which is like, oh wait, I found it. I'm sorry, I'm silly. There it is. So he actually
I would think
did.
that was quite surprising.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Um, hmm. I'd be curious. Like, I'm just kind of interested now. I was just thinking while you're talking,
Hmm.
um, that I wonder if like because of the unheard edition and just like the general, it is a longer wipe and stuff, and like the way things played out, like, because what this has got, almost 200K views, which is like pretty, and it's I don't know. I'd be curious to see how that stacks up to like other timelines of similar events, because it just seems like a little bit on the lower side, but that could easily be because of the unheard edition debacle, right? It
Maybe.
could be, it's like too soon to get excited for a wipe, what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like if the wipe's like planned in August, I don't know. It's just I'd just be interested to see what's going on there, because it just seems kind of low for hype.
Maybe. I mean, it was also the wipe date was like quite a long way out as well. But yeah, I think the
Yes.
unheard edition thing really did. It killed off a lot of uh, the anticipation for a lot of people. I feel like it's one of those things where the broader community, some people may have like disappeared off, or they're just like not interested if it's so far away. Hard to know. It's very,
Yeah.
very hard to know.
I'm looking at earlier, um, and I haven't found a Tarkov TV one. I've seen patch notes, but it's the patch notes were similar numbers, so it's maybe irrelevant.
Yeah,
Anyways.
I'm not really sure. I mean, even for small fry boys like me, I
Mm-hmm.
did like a wipe, like anticipation video, whatever, and that's like done quite well for the late wipe. It's
Mm-hmm.
like 110 for me, which is
Mm-hmm.
like good. That's very, very good for this time of the wipe. But obviously, it's like now it's closer. Like we know that it's August, so people are like thinking about actually like what am I going to do? Like back in June or May or whatever, when they knew it was August, it's like, oh well, it's so far away. Like who knows? Anything could change by then. Whereas
Yeah.
now it's kind of why I posted one like recently-ish, because it's like, well, you might want to start thinking about this stuff. You know?
Yeah.
Yep. I don't know.
I'm just curious how they compare, quarter to quarter, or annual to annual.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Anyways, before I go down I'm already like, pulling up the analytics, getting the spreadsheets ready.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, we can't really take anything. I was thinking about the roadmap as well, but I don't think there's really anything in the roadmap that's that interesting, because
Mm-hmm.
when I did my video about it, I had a look cross-reference, and the roadmap's like very generic, and Tarkov TV was like a lot more detailed.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't really tell us anything either, particularly. Yeah, so that's it really. It's either going to be next week or the week after, I think. I mean, it could in theory go later than that if BSG have a problem or
Mm-hmm.
something. You never really know, but I think it's 50-50 to be the 8th, and then it could be later. It's going to depend on the nature of this like global quest as people get it done and how that feeds into the later stuff. It's interesting though, because usually these things happen just like each day. It's like, oh, there's a new thing, here's a new thing, here's a new thing. Whereas this one is, we've got a new event. It's until the 6th. Like it's from now to the 2nd until the 6th. So they might, if they don't do anything else outside of that, they could do the fire sale on the 7th, I suppose, and then wipe on the 8th. But
Mm-hmm.
I just think it lends a little bit more towards the 15th if they don't do anything in between.
Mm-hmm.
So we just have to monitor it and see really. But yeah, it'd be nice if we had a little bit more time to understand what we actually we're looking at in terms of when it's going to be. It's such a pain.
Yeah.
It's such a pain.
Even just like, well, I guess he did say month of August, right?
They did.
Yeah.
They did. So that's kind of fair. And early as well. So it sort of sets out the time frame.
Yeah. Okay.
If they do it on the 8th, then it's basically what they said. So
Yeah.
I can't really complain. I'm just butthurt. Oh dear. So okay, so that's basically it. Actually, let me just triple check what we had on our topics. Yeah, so actually let me just run, like, mine actually, my topics are pretty quick today. So we'll just do the surveys one. I ran 2 surveys just out of interest about the wipe, and this time rather than about levels in particular, because this sort of came off the back of like all the economics chat about people being like, oh, the casuals, if you put the stuff in raid, the casuals will never be able to grind to level 42 and get the cult termite. I'm just like, man, I just think that's such a dumb take. Like, those people aren't getting to level 42. So I did 2 surveys, and I did 2 because I thought there was kind of like interesting to see the same question across 2 platforms. Now, obviously, my YouTube channel is by far and away bigger than my Twitter, but you tend to find that Twitter's kind of more concentrated, I guess, on like the hardcore people, and YouTube is more people who are like more loosely connected to the game, I find. And so there is a very wide discrepancy between the numbers of people on each poll. So the YouTube poll, and also YouTube gives you more options. I did the YouTube one first, and then I remembered that Twitter only gives you 4. You can only have 4 answers on Twitter, which is annoying, which you can have as many as you want on YouTube. So I did like, what is your highest PMC level in patch 14 on YouTube? And basically, I guess, yeah, do you want to pull it up? How do you want?
I can't.
Will it not copy?
I'm gonna try this real quick. Oh, I can't like copy it. Is there like a hyperlink to it?
I don't know. It's just a picture in a Google Doc.
All right. I mean, yeah, I'll let
me grab it for you. I'll get it a different way for you.
Okay. It's gonna be a little cursed because it's like the colors are inverted, so I have like a bootleg dark mode.
I have that too.
Yeah.
I want exactly the same thing.
Yeah, I get on that. I'm personally like I can't, I hate it when like I'm watching a video and then I just get like flashbanged by the person who like opens up Google, they open up some application just like one giant way. It's like, so out of consideration for others, I try to avoid that. But
yeah, same. I've sent it to you properly, but I guess you could see it on the screen anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So it's basically like these two polls are like effectively the same poll. There's more options on YouTube because I did that one first, and then I realized, oh crap, I can only put in 4 options on Twitter. I also didn't put didn't play PvP on the YouTube one, which is also stupid. But regardless, right? What I did is I overlapped the 2 categories. So on YouTube, 1 to 29, so it's 1 to 14 is 14%. So the YouTube one is the one at the bottom, and the Twitter one is the one at the top. 1 to 14, like what's your highest PMC level in patch 14? 1 to 4, like level 1 to 14, so not even at the flea, was 14%. So that's quite a lot of people, given that it's August. August now. It was the end of July. Level 15 to 29 was 21%. The most popular category was level 30 to 42 at 26%. And then you've got 42 to 50 as 21%, and 51 plus is 17%. So it's quite like a nice little bell curve. I managed to get these, and I just did it by, the reason why I did it like this is basically like 1 to 14 is no flea, 15 to 29 is no mechanic 3, 30 to 42 is doesn't have max traders, and then 42 to 50 is like people who kind of got to max level and then sort of were like, yeah, whatever, like that's just it. And then 51 plus is like, people who've just continued playing the whole wipe kind of thing. So it sort of broadly buckets into, progression levels. But as we can see here, as we usually find, if we add up these things, 14 plus 21 plus 26, you get to 61% of players that didn't get to max traders. So those, like, only 39% of the player base are even able to buy the Cult Termite Classics plate. So, people who are talking about this armor change thing and being like, hey, put it in Kibber, like, this is a great idea, like, put it maybe on the bosses or whatever. Somebody who's level 30 could kill Vishala and his boys, right? It's possible. Whereas if you don't get to level 42, you can't buy the Cult Termite. It's just you can't. It's a mathematical impossibility. You're going to have to get it from a player, right? Or Kibber specifically now with the change they've done. Yeah, so like saying that I just don't accept the argument that casual players are hurt by this change. Like, oh, but you could just put in the work and then get it, at your leisure. Like, well, if you couldn't get to 42 in 7 months, then like that's not really, it takes a huge grind. So I just think it's stupid to make the argument. So 61% on YouTube are not at max traders. Now, what's interesting is if you put it on Twitter, and I mean, yeah, the sample size is very different. So 5,600 votes on YouTube, 445 votes on Twitter, which kind of makes sense. I have like 4,000 followers on Twitter and I have like 115k subs on YouTube. So it's like a very, very wide gap between the two. So it's only a small number of people on Twitter. But as I said, usually those people are more engaged. They're usually the end game players. And on that one, I had to bucket them up into smaller buckets. 1 to 29 together as a grouping is 18.7% on Twitter, whereas together on YouTube, that would have been 35%. So literally half the number on Twitter. 30 to 42, I did just keep as its own category, which is 17% on Twitter, which is like 26% on YouTube. And then 42 plus is 53.7% on Twitter. And obviously there's 10% on the Twitter poll of people who didn't actually play. So you can kind of bump those numbers up a little. If you just remove that, you can bump the numbers up by about 10% just to make it make sense. So 42 plus is like 60% of people on Twitter, whereas on YouTube it's 38%. Which is kind of interesting. So like it goes to show like just the sampling bias on these things. You can get like vastly different numbers depending on like who you poll, where you poll them. I mean, I just was intrigued to see like how different the numbers would be. It makes sense. You probably could have predicted this beforehand, before I'd done the experiment. Go like, oh, you probably got more new players on YouTube, more people who are going to just, like, oh yeah, generally watch the channel, whatever, rather than people who are like looking out on Twitter for everything. It's part of the reason why the Tarkov creator sphere exists, right? Because like stuff gets posted on Twitter and people don't hear about it, and then they make a YouTube video because basically you don't put any of this information on YouTube. But people typically engage more with YouTube in a general sense, and YouTube's probably better at delivering content to people who want to see it than other platforms. Twitter's not doing a bad job if you curate your algorithm, but a lot of people just don't even bother and look at like the subscription, like, or people I only follow only page and stuff like this. Like Twitter's a bit weird depending on how you use it. So yeah, I mean, it's just always good to do these, get a read on the community. As we said, even in the longest wipes of all time, I think this wipe is not the longest wipe of all time yet, but by the 8th it will be. Today it is the day 219 of patch 14. In general, 14.9.5 we're on now or something. And patch 13.5 was 225 days. So we've got 6 days left, which incidentally matches exactly up with Thursday the 8th. And that would mean that if it wipes on Thursday the 8th, both patch 13.5 and patch 14 would have been, patch 13 and patch 14, would both have been 225 days each. So after Thursday, after the 8th, it'll be the longest wipe ever at 7.5 months, which is pretty nuts. It's pretty nuts. And even then, we don't have 50% of players making it to level 42.
Yeah, there's some interesting thoughts I have, because I wonder, I mean, there's no way to like, I guess you could poll for this in a separate poll, but like it'd just be interesting to know, let's say that 1 to 14, what percentage of that are new players versus like players who played up to the unheard edition debacle. I'd be interested in that. Also, you're gonna have to like dock a few percentage points off of didn't play PvP this swipe in your first poll, because in my slumber of waking up, I thought it said didn't play PvE this swipe, and so I hit the button, and like, I was like, oh, I can't unhit the button. No, what have I done? I've ruined the data.
I actually had quite a few people saying that they hit that instead, or like they misread it and like pressed the wrong button. So I'm like, oh dear.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Wonder why the human brain, it's like weird. See stuff where it isn't there.
It's funny because I had a comment on YouTube as well saying like, oh, the question is really weirdly worded, and other people were like, no, it isn't, and some people were like, no, I think it is as well. And because I said, what is your highest PMC level on PvP in patch 14? And people were like, it's kind of worded as if like people have like multiple characters or like wiping their characters or whatever. And I was like, well, the reason why I did that is because I've had comments in the past being like, well, I was level 53, but then I wiped it and like now I'm level 60. So like what, maybe, or I'm doing hardcore now and I'm level 27. So maybe I should should I put the old one or the new one?
Oh,
like I've had people like say that before. So that's why I did it like this. And then
I see why you said high. Yeah, that makes sense.
So because people like, they have like, they do like multiple characters in the wipe. Yeah. It's not many people, but some people do that. So that's kind of why I said that, just to avoid any ambiguity. But then other people who don't do that were just like, can't conceive of resetting your account, which like, to be honest, I don't really do that either. were then confused. So I was just like, well, okay, you just can't win. That's
Right.
the classic case of being a creator. Right? You just can't win. You appease one group, and then somebody else pops up and goes, hey, but now I'm confused. It's just like, oh, okay. Whatever.
That's just like life in general.
Really
You just can't win.
Yeah.
There is
yeah. Yep. So yeah. The only other thing that I would say about the poll is, if I ask a general question of people who are following Tarkov but aren't really playing, they may answer the poll and be like, oh, I'm level 27 when I last played, but they might not still be playing. So whether they can buy the cult termite is sort of irrelevant. So like, I'm like making a counter argument to my own argument. I'm saying like, I'm just saying like, oh, it's not like you saying that casual players will never get there, so it's it's not fair to have it like all blocked behind level 42. And I'm saying, well, no, it's like you can see from the data that there's lots of people who are less than level 42. It's like, well, that doesn't really take into account the people that they got to the level, they just aren't playing anymore. Like, I don't have that extra information of like, are you still playing or not? Because obviously, if you think about it for 2 seconds, then you're going to have a very skewed distribution. If you added an extra column, which obviously you can't do in these kind of forms, if you added an extra column of like, are you still playing, yes or no? A lot of the people, I imagine, who got to level 15, level 19, 21, 23, they're probably not playing still, even though they're probably going to play the next wipe. They're still watching the videos. Like, I have lots of people who come on my videos and be like, I'm not playing, but I'm going to play next wipe, and I still love the content. Like, thanks for making it. And I'm like, well, that person's not even going to buy a cult termite, so it doesn't matter. And like, but if they had continued playing, maybe they would have got to 42. So it's like, it's hard to then like match that up, It's like hard to know.
What even constitutes as playing? I log in and I change my hideout crafts and collect my Bitcoin. Does that constitute as me playing the game?
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough. So that's all I'll say. I mean, these surveys are very one-sided. They're very one-dimensional. They tell you something.
Yeah.
But it's like I don't even know how you could imagine it. It's like, you can taste the cake, but from the taste of the cake, you can't really tell how it's made. That's not a very good analogy. But it's like there's a lot of inputs, and there's like a methodology and all this stuff that you have the final answer, but it doesn't necessarily like allow you to work anything backwards.
Yeah.
You couldn't work out what's in it just based off the end result. You need more detail
of information. It's like a data point in and of itself. It's not like the end all be all.
Yeah. Exactly.
See?
And the fact that
number bigger equals I'm bright.
Yep. And the fact that the data is so skewed depending on where you poll and who you are, right? Like Airwing's poll is probably going to be different to my poll, which would be different to Tiggs's poll, which would be different to, Landmark's poll and Pesterly's poll, right? Like it's going to depend on your viewership and what kind of player watches you and where you poll them and which platform and who engages with what and which place.
Gosh,
it's tricky.
If only we could like poll the entire Tarkov community and like have it integrate into the player base some way. And maybe like BSG could operate this operation and do this.
That'd be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah. That would be good.
Then you wouldn't even need to poll people because you'd just be able to see the information.
Yeah, if only they could survey the population.
Yeah, in game with a kind of survey.
Yeah.
We still have this tab down here. It's got nothing in it. They should just add random surveys in, I think.
It'd be good engagement.
In there.
I don't know if they care about that, but
can you imagine though? Like you just put one survey in each week about random stuff, and they just give you like some like 500k rubles for doing it. Everyone would log in and get it. Like it'd be so easy. It's so easy. It'd be like a drop. Didn't even have to be like anything crazy like that. It would have you just give them like something, an M4 or something, and people would log in and take it. Like of course they would. It'd be funny.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Free resource that I'm never gonna use. Sign me up. Classic.
Yep.
So I guess like kind of continuing on with that, do you want to like switch into some more of the econ stuff, or you want to just like skim over the 556 stuff you've been working on? What do we do from here?
We could do econ. Econ.
Yeah, it kind of like ties in nicely. Yeah, oh man, yeah. I enjoyed last week thoroughly much because it's just like hitting all the spots for me, like this like weird. I like the only other game I could like compare it to is like Dota, where or League of Legends, if you will, where you have like this like economy aspect of the game. Like I haven't really played anything else like that before. I guess like it's the StarCraft kind of like qualify as well, because there is like resources, right, if I'm not mistaken, but it's a little bit more like unit driven. You know,
It depends on what you mean, right? Like StarCraft is very econ heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, RTSs are more or less resource heavy
Right.
and econ heavy, depending on what game it is. You have something like, well, you have the games like Total War type games that have no resources at all. They're more like points based, and they're just like tactics. And then you have other games that, on the other end of the spectrum, which is more like Age of Empires, like your StarCrafts, that kind of thing. And you can have games with more resources or less resources. You got something that sits in the middle, like Command and Conquer. It's like relatively straightforward on resourcing. You've got Tiberian, and that's it. And back in the day, Red Alert was ore for Red Alert, as opposed to like the Tiberian series. But it's usually, that was like one resource, maybe two. Like sometimes there was like extra special minerals, whatever, that kind of thing. But like CNC is like pretty basic. So it depends really. I mean, like StarCraft's like very econ centric in that you have it's more about like build order, kind of. Like it's more about like what do you have planned, And it was like a sort of the rock paper scissors of StarCraft. Like I actually probably have more experience. Well, no, I've had more hands-on experience with StarCraft 2, but even still. Like the way that it works, and it's like the interplay between the different factions as well. It's like, are you going to go super aggressive, or are you going to go more of an econ thing? But like econ builds, it's one of those things where a rush build will beat like a normal build, but a normal build will beat an econ build.
Gotcha.
Well, no, sorry, the other way around. A rush build will beat an econ build, for sure. And then the econ build will beat the normal build, and the normal build will beat the rush build. So it goes in that order, because like you try to expand too much, and if someone just does like an all-in like rush, you don't have any fighters and you die. If you go for an econ build, yes, if they go for a normal build, then they'll have more army than you, but because you're on the defender, you have like an advantage. So you're in your own base, or you've got like the way that you put your buildings out in StarCraft like matters as well, because you like block your base in and stuff. So it's really like, am I going to take like one set of minerals? Am I going to take an extra set of minerals, expand early, that kind of stuff. So it's that kind of thing. It's more about like territory and like guarding your resources than anything else. And like Age of Empires is sort of similar, and like is actually, I mean, I really like Age of Empires. Lots of people love Age of Empires too, and that's simply because in many ways I think it's because the game's like quite complicated, right? You've got and the resources are interlinked. You've got wood and food. You've also got gold and stone. Gold being very important, but gold like being quite hard to defend sometimes. So it's like, depends. Yeah, it sort of depends on the game. Whereas like Tarkov is, I mean, it's not a strategy game, right? So it's
right.
It's different.
You're strategic about.
It's strategic, but it isn't resources. A strategy game. Yeah. Exactly.
Like you're not building up resources necessarily to like, for like a particular strategy, right? It's just kind of like a generic. The strategy is surviving, and like resource equal good. It's like,
for the most part, yes. You could make some, like, we're talking about money. We're talking about rubles, for the most part. You could like think about some other resources, which would be things like, your hideout and your crafting. You have to get to do a certain quest, like maybe progress to a certain quest. Or whatever.
That's true. XP is like a resource. Trader rep is like a resource. Absolutely.
Yeah, and like just what you have unlocked is sort of a resource. It's like, oh, you have Workbench 3, you have a bunch of money, you have the flea market, you have max traders, but until you do your Carnies of Service, you can't make 85501. So there's like specific things like that as well. It's good. It's like the player-driven economy is the big difference between these things, right? It's like you're an individual actor within a broader ecosystem, and that's I think the biggest difference between these types of games. Absolutely. Like the other game that comes to mind for this kind of thing is Eve. It's Eve Online. It's a game that I've never played. I like came close to playing it a couple of times, but every single time I thought, wow, I've missed the boat, or friends like had a go and then weren't that interested and kind of like lost interest, and I was busy and then ended up not getting into it. And I've always said, like, people have talked to me about Eve like so many times over the years, saying like, it'll be your perfect game, Giga. It'll be like the best game ever. And I'm like, yes, there's probably an alternative universe where I live with my mom and dad still, and I'm playing Eve. Like, that's probably that exists. There's a parallel universe where I discovered Eve early, and it was just, I never ended up doing the stuff I ended up doing. So like,
the World of Warcraft equivalent for spreadsheet enthusiasts.
Yeah, I think so. Because because the World of Warcraft thing for me was just like, it's like I never ended up playing it, and and I had a lot of friends that did. I had like some that did, some that didn't, but we were never like a crazy group about WoW, even the guys who were playing. Whereas, yeah, I don't know, and it's like, I played my fair share of RPGs, and they're fine, and they're good dopamine or whatever, but yeah, nothing quite catches me like the spreadsheet simulator, you know. It's just its own thing. But I think it's like that part of being part of the broader economy is very appealing to me.
Oh yeah,
you're kind of responding to. It feels very real, because it is very real, you know. Like, the stuff in there is arbitrary, but like the way that people react and the way that the community responds in general is like that's a real thing. I remember there was the old like Greek economic like finance minister or whatever, and he had a bunch of experience with, and I can't remember which game it was. I think it was Team Fortress 2.
Oh, interesting.
And he'd done like a whole load of work on like Team Fortress 2 from like an economic like research perspective, because he was like, one of the hardest things about being an economist is you just never have all of the information. So you can't really see, like, it's hard, like, it's difficult to, you do something, or like, you know, something happens in the world, and you can see, a bit like we were talking about the cake, right? Like, you can see some of the effects, but you don't necessarily, you have to kind of speculate about some of the inputs, like, why did it end up like this? Well, it's probably because of this and that, and this is how we thought people responded. But he was like, the thing about a game economy that's big enough is that you get real world effects of people doing stuff, and you can see everything. You have every piece of information, you have every transaction that's happened, you can see when people did stuff on everyone's individual accounts, because you control the whole game universe. So you can see, you can monitor, you can measure things like speed of community response to stuff, which like you can kind of do in the real world as well. But you know, like a piece of news comes out and prices change. Well, that how fast does that price move? Like, where does it move to? Does it overshoot and then come back? Like, you know, you can do that kind of stuff in the real world. But obviously, in a game, and you know, in the game world, you've just got everything. You've got all the information. You can see who was doing that, how many players caught onto that early. Did, you know, is that move driven by a small number of people or a large number of people? And it was basically the perfect test bed for like economic theory, was his argument to this kind of stuff. And so, you know, if it's good enough for him, then it's definitely good enough for us as a player, right? To get like an experience that feels real. It feels like being part of a real marketplace in the real world, with people responding like how they actually would, based on economic incentives or whatever. Even down to things like, and it's not even to say, you know, the economy is like, because actually the Tarkov economy is very inefficient right now. You know, and it's not even like everybody acts like a rational actor to make as much profit as possible. That's not even true in the Tarkov world. It's like, it's much more realistic like that, which when people feel like they don't need that resource as much anymore, people don't really bother. And there's arbitrage opportunities all over Tarkov's flea market right now. But because people just don't need any more money, they're just not engaged with it. So even that is interesting, right? It's like there's literally free money out there. People just can't be bothered to take it, because it's like, why? They don't need it. Everyone's got 100 million, so like, why? It's fascinating. It is fascinating, and that's like that like sense of like the real impact is very cool for me. I like that a lot, because you can think up the ways that things change, or you can see a change and you can speculate how it's gonna change the player base, because the player base drives a lot of how this stuff works, right? If you want to go and do the cult termite barter, well, you have to go and buy a SAS drive from somebody who's found one. And so these things are people doing real stuff, even though it's in the game world. It's like it's real outcomes. It's like, I like it a lot. And the Eve is like that, apparently. Like, I'm a complete non-expert. I've never played the game, but I've heard enough to know that it's. I think you could buy your in-game, like, cause it's a pay-to-play game, right? It's like pay monthly kind of thing. But you could, once you get to a certain level, I think you could like pay. Maybe this is not true anymore, but you used to be able to pay your like monthly sub, like with credits in game and stuff. So people would like, you know,
so you could
amass
like
money to be able to pay in game, and that kind of thing.
So you could like play the game to generate enough currency to then buy the subscription to keep playing the game,
something like that. Yeah, which is kind of genius in some ways. Again, I don't know if that's still the case. Like that was the case like 10 years ago or something. I don't know. I don't keep up with Eve at all. I don't know really anything about the game. The game's too old. There's too many old timers. That being said, actually, the last time I did speak to people about it, they were saying actually some of the old timers are getting annoyed because they're trying to change the game a bit so that it's easier for people to catch up. But then old timers thinking like, well, why did I spend so much time doing it if somebody could just play for like half a year and then catch up, right? It's like, what was all the effort for, right? We've been playing for years. So it's like it's a hard balance with these old games. But anyway, it's long gone for me. I just don't have time for stuff like that in a minute. Unless I'm going to quit Tarkov and play E full time. Like there's just there's no way that fits into my life.
I don't know. I just don't know if I could like try it and then also be like fully engaged with it, because it seems a bit more, like I was playing. Oh yeah, one morning I like woke up. I had like some stuff I wanted to do, and I I can't. I don't know. I didn't sleep well that night, or I can't remember. But I was just like, oh, let me just like play a game to get like the blood flowing to my brain. So like I booted up Fallout New Vegas, which is like you know kind of a mix of action RPG. And what I was doing was like more RPG stuff, and I was like falling asleep in my chair. And I was like, okay, this isn't gonna work. I would go get some coffee, and I'm like booting up Overwatch because it's like firing, much more active, action. And it was like, yeah, once the coffee kicked in, it was like, an hour later, it's like, okay, I'm good to go now. It's like I'm fully locked in now. But yeah, that the New Vegas, I was like falling asleep. So I fear like if I did try something like that, it's like a slow burner. It's like it takes a while to sort of get locked in, for me at least. Like I kind of got like a zoomer brain. I need like flashing imagery on the screen and input feedback.
The other thing that kind of puts me off, that kind of thing, is sort of what put me off Foxhole in the end. Like I don't know if I spoke much about Foxhole.
I remember you
on
telling me
stream.
about Foxhole. Yeah,
And that was quite cool as well, because that was like the big play environment. And like my ultimate conclusion about Foxhole was, I like the idea more than I like the game.
That's interesting.
And I think for me, that's purely because it's very community centric in terms of actually playing, which Eve is as well. In that you can play Tarkov solo and be just fine. You can go and play Overwatch online, whatever, like on your own, like play on like a bunch of these RPGs by yourself. Like it's not no big deal. Like you can get something else out of playing in bigger groups, and like WoW is another one of these types of games as well.
Yeah,
where it's very community centric. But like Foxhole, you basically had to be one of the big clans, or you couldn't really access the end game content, or like you wouldn't really be able to like do the things that are actually fun, like drive the tanks, whatever. You're just kind of like a grunt, which was okay for a bit, but it's kind of got a bit. I was like, you probably do have to join a bigger group to do anything interesting here. And Eve seemed the same, like almost impossible for solo. It's all about like big corporations and how people like group together and backstab and whatever. And like again, that's interesting when you hear like the 1 hour YouTube documentary about the 6 months of whatever it is. But to actually like do it involves like speaking to lots of people, something that I typically am not particularly fond of. Doing like randoms, like being part of a group where it's like, oh, you need to be on this night, like that's complete no for me. Like I will not do that. It's just like I like other people can't claim my time in that way. And like so those kind of games, that's always put me off. It's like there's this fine balance between a game that has like a big economy but incentivizes like group communities to come together, like big clans or whatever, to like dominate the game, versus games that just don't have that at all. It's like there's only a few games in that middle ground, Tarkov being one of them. There's like an open free market, but like you can play by yourself just as well as you can other things. I don't really know how Rust works in that way. Like, can you can solo Rust, I guess, but it's like probably very difficult.
It's similar to what you're describing. Like, it's actually interesting because in some ways, the dichotomy between a game like Overwatch, where it's just like or whatever, you can like just boot up the game. Call of Duty, actually, you can just like boot the game, play by yourself. Great, it functions. Like you're kind of like, it's like designed in that sense. Whereas like these other games, like it's much more. It asks a lot more investment from you as the player, and it's like, and the pros and cons of that is like, you may, if it requires you to be more interwoven into the game and like it's like community identity, if you will, then it's like you have like a stronger tie to that game, so to speak. Like you might be more loyal, if you will, to the game, versus like something like Call of Duty. It's like, I feel nothing. Like the thing that I kind of like hate about Call of Duty is like it's so easy to get into like like monkey brain mode, where it's just like I run around, I die, I respawn, I run around, I die, I respawn, I run around, I die, I respawn, run around, I kill someone. Okay, it's just like it's like mine off, just like mindless monkey. Whereas like Tarkov is just like my mind can never be off. Like I don't know how people play the game of music. It's just like
Yeah.
Who are you? What type of creature am I? Like what? Yeah, just like I could
Yeah.
never. Like I mean, maybe if I'm like that uh numb to like Tarkov, maybe just like the
Mm.
lab's Tarkov doomer. It's just
I'm just like mulling over in my head about just like what's in why is Tarkov the way it is, and like why is Rust and these other games not the way they are? Like what in terms of Rust, I just want to ask you a question before I kind of come to this conclusion. In terms of progression, like what is like the biggest blocker to like actually progressing? Like what's the thing that you have to do the most that prevents you from progressing? Like from you're just naked on the beach or whatever. Like what is like the most like time intensive thing, like activity?
mm,
Is it like
just like
resource collection?
yeah, just like yeah, farming, just like climbing up the ladder. I mean, like
It's the tech tree, is it?
basically, yeah, yeah,
Because this I think is the important point. Because yes, Tarkov has the hideout, which has sort of an element of that. But the important resource in Tarkov isn't really like it's not really like collecting like resource per
right,
se.
right.
It's more about like you leveling yourself.
Mm-hmm,
Like no one can
mm-hmm.
really help you. It's like quest progression, right? It's like it's coming back to like yeah, money's
Yeah,
important, but XP is the ultimate resource in EFT. That's what unlocks the ability to get this
largely
stuff.
is.
And I think that may be the difference between these things, right? Like resource collection is easier with 2, which is easier with 3, which is easier with 10. Whereas like
Yes.
Tarkov isn't any easier with 10 people. Obviously, you can't even play with 10 people, but it's like, yeah, you can play with 5, but like then you've got to deal with communication and all this other stuff. And everybody's then like on top of each other trying to
That's
complete
true.
quests as well, right? Unless you're literally doing the same quests and they're fetch quests, like,
Yeah,
and you're trying to get the same types of item. It's like, I don't know, Tarkov almost doesn't want you to play together. It's like,
that's a very valid point, and something that's like very like it can be very frustrating. I'll say is like you want to play with your friends, but maybe you're kind of like on different paths, and like especially when they made the key changes they did where you couldn't drop keys
yeah,
anymore. That like it sucks to say, but like it's like I can't. You're exactly right. It's like we can't amalgamate our resources together as like to like help each other. It's like I have to make a sacrifice on my own progression to help you out, which is
mhm,
like it doesn't feel great all the time. It's like
correct.
I don't know. Like I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but it definitely is like a roadblocker.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's like that doesn't necessarily feel very good, but
Hmm.
it does exist. That is a thing, and but then that also makes it so that you can kind of like you can't just like group together, and because it's sort of like grouping together is actually kind of difficult and like not really very helpful. It then ends up making it feel less like community driven as a game and easier to get into as a solo, which is kind of fun. There's
Yeah,
like
that's
tons
true.
of
That's
people in
true.
chat who are basically saying soloing Rust is super hard. If you're not on a server with small teams only, you
Yeah,
can get
it's
swarmed and
rough.
never begin. And it's like, you're saying about, getting players who are really involved in the community or whatever. Like, you end up with this really tight knit community. Like, how many players is Eve getting? I don't know, right? You've only got like the old hardcore left who are all in there. It's basically like groups of friends. As you come in as a newcomer, you're like joining a new social group, right? It's like, it's hard. That's a difficult thing. Um, Whereas like Tarkov's still getting lots of new players even now. Like you run into them all the time, and people on my streams, whatever, being like, "This is my first wipe," and I'm just like, "Who? Like, where did you come from? Like, how is this your first Tarkov wipe? Like, I mean, I'm pleased, obviously, but where did like why now? Of all like it's been out for so long. People just discover it at random times, and then they can play because you can play on your own. You don't need to be part of a big clan. You don't need to be part of a
Yeah,
big
that's
group. And
true.
that put me a lot off when I was playing Foxhole. Just like, okay, I can see what I need to do this. I'm actually going to have to go and apply, and then these people want you to play seriously. So, and you just, I don't know. I was just
Yeah.
like, okay. So, like, it's weird. It's actually ended up being like there's some silver lining, let's say, to these like
Oh yeah.
restrictions. Right? Like, even without the keys change or RMT or whatever, it's still not that helpful to be in a group of like a big group because you're all on different quests and whatnot. So, like,
I
yeah,
mean,
you could wind some of that back, make the player base have a better time, and still not ruin that, in my opinion.
yeah, I think it's very funny the concept that like you know in Tarkov, my having more people is like a detriment.
Mm,
It's like so funny, so counter. But like, there is some like I guess you could make the argument that if if you're pulling together to help, your friend do X quest, y- if you'd play protect the president, then like technically their chances of like succeeding is like in theory, like an ideal theory is like higher. In practice, debatable, but it's just like Yeah, I don't know. And also, yeah, there's like another weird dichotomy too, where I just remembered is like there's times where you actually don't want to play with your friends. So if I
Hmm.
need like 10 kills on interchange, having my friends come with me like takes away kill opportunities from me, which is also
Yeah.
like, kind of feels bad. And like there are absolutely times where we have been like, yeah, I'm just gonna go solo because I have to do this quest. And I just want more, like, especially setup. Actually, setup is so classic. We like, except for like the handful of people that just like really don't want to play solo, it's like, yeah,
Mm.
we'll come with you on customs, but it's typically, at least I can at least think of one person for absolutely that me and him, it's like we'll be in a Discord call just like soloing. It's
Yeah.
like, but it's kind of a crappy situation, but it's just maximizing the opportunity. It's like I don't want to, as much fun as it is to play together, we're kind of like hurting each other in a sense,
Yeah.
because the goal is to get kills, not to survive. Like survival's kind of like whatever.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it's just like why add that extra?
It would be a bit like you're playing, Diablo or like some action RPG
Hmm.
like that, and there's this fixed amount of XP, and if you take your friend in, you both get half each.
Yeah,
You'd be
you're
like,
so
man,
right.
like it's like that. Like,
You're so
and you're like,
right.
God, okay, we'll just play two separate instances then and just like chat. It's like it's weird, but yeah,
God,
it's
you're
it's
so
just it's
right.
just so strange. It's just such a strange situation.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's like we were
I
talking
don't
about
even.
economies, right? We went full
Yeah.
circle. I think that was cool. That was cool though. That was a cool tangent. I like that one. We were talking
Um.
about like economies and like you mentioned about like the Tarkov free market and people are
Mhm.
always talking about like the old M61 times or whatever. Like, what were you? What kind of part of it were you thinking about after like our intro? Like, what about
Oh
the recent stuff? Is
God.
it about like trader access or like plates or the end game gear or whatever? Like the end
Well.
game conversation. Like I guess just to start it off, the end game conversation. I was talking with my chat about it being like the way I see it is that it's a bit like, say there's 4 bars, they go from 0 to 10 each. The early game, you're kind of trying to get a maximal balance between each of the 4 bars. You could assign them whatever labels you want, like
What are the
combat
four
performance,
bars?
hideout. Like, I don't know,
Oh, okay,
it doesn't really
okay.
matter. This is just a thought experiment. But the early game Tarkov's like, Tarkov is like this, and like the games like it are like this, where you've got like a couple of different things you want to complete, but they're like competing against each other. So, I want to take really good
Yeah.
gear into raid, but that costs money, but I could also spend that on my hideout. This kind of thing. So you've got like a couple of different categories. Let's just say 4, and they all go up to 10.
This
And
is
you're going
kind of
like, well, if I
like.
do like 3 in one and then 6 in the other, but if I take 1 off this, then I can get 2 more over here. That's kind of the early one. That's why people like it. But the problem with Tarkov and the way that Tarkov is like set up right now, once you get to the end game and you've unlocked all the stuff and you get to the end, you can spend the money and you can get 10 in every category. Like that's kind of the issue. And that's what I've argued against for years about like you shouldn't really be able to do that, even at the end game. Like the end game should be I've moved from 3s and 4s in every category, and maybe I can push 1 to a 6 if I spend extra money, up to like a 8, 9, and maybe 10 in one category kind of situation. But I shouldn't be able to get all things at all time,
Right.
without some
Because
kind of
then
investment.
like what incentive do you have to play once everything's at 10? Like at that point you have to like the game no longer has like is providing you incentive necessarily. You have to sort of like create your
Yeah.
incentive, which is like fine,
Mhm.
but like at the same time, it's like I didn't play the game initially to create my own incentive. It's like I played the
Exactly.
game and it's like it gave me a challenge and I did it. And now that I'm at the end of the challenge, it's like, well, that was fun. I guess I'll wait till it asks me for another challenge next wipe.
Exactly. Exactly. And like there's so many people who are just like, oh, but the shooting or whatever, it's a reward in and of itself. And it's like, well, that's fine. But then if you're going to take that approach or make that argument, then like what's stopping anybody just playing COD or like
Mhm.
Overwatch or, Apex Legends or really any of the other games? Because if the shooting, well, then it's just the same. I could go and play any of these games. What's going to keep you in the game? What's interesting about the game that's keeping you there?
Yeah.
And that's really what I'm arguing about, like making the game more compelling than the other comparable games. That's why we're here playing Tarkov in the first place. Which is why I think that they should put the plates in the raid, and why I think they should take them off the traders, and why if they're going to have them on the traders, it needs to be more restricted in some way or whatever. And like even the plates out. I feel that players who are like not max trader players should be able to get the plates sometimes. not that often. It's like early wipe, and you find, like, I remember early wipe finding when they just released it, the Tasmanian Tiger SK rig, and it wasn't that good. Like, I used it quite a lot back in the old armor system because it was decent enough back then. But early wipe, man, I was an absolute king. Like class 6, even though it's ceramic, I was wandering around just like tanking like like a beast. It was crazy. And then
this is
pre-armor change, yeah.
Pre-armor change. So you still had hit zones, but just pre-armor revert to the old way.
Well, this is like old armor. This is like old armor.
Okay,
like
so no hits, no hit boxes. It's like everything's covered.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty nice.
And it was great. And the thing is about that is that eventually you die, or I think I died. I got like 3 kills on reserve, and then got killed by the 4th player or something. Because I got headshots, or the armor eventually will get damaged and break. You won't be able to repair it anymore, and then you get to throw it away. And so it's like it's okay for. It's almost like let's utilize the fact that Tarkov isn't an ARPG. It would break the game in an ARPG if low-level players could suddenly find like the best item in the game because you have it forever. So flipping that on its head, Tarkov is different, right? This is why like the best items in the game don't matter as much, because you could lose them at any time because the items are just transitory. They're only on you for a bit. So flipping it on its head, doesn't matter if you give level 1 the best item in the game sometimes, because it's only going to last for so long. They're probably going to die with it, or it's going to go on the floor. Like obviously you have these questions about supply and demand or whatever, but like rare stuff is okay sometimes to give to people as long as they can't use it constantly. And that's why I think it would be, if you're kind of grading these kind of things, it's like, and the same with ammo. I found like a box of 100 M995 the other day on Words, and it's like, okay, I found that one time, but like I don't know how I would repeat this really, other than just going to that same place. Like it's very difficult to know where to go because it doesn't spawn all the time, so you never see it, so you never know that it spawns there. There's like this strange circle I've always found in EFT of like, how does everybody know where the loot spots are? It's like people just like watching streamers do the map again and again and again and checking every single spot. It's like it's like really strange,
hate it,
right?
To be honest,
I kind of hate it too, because I don't spend a lot of time on Twitch and watching other people. So like that's what often I end up with chat being like, oh, there's a spawn here, or there's a spawn there, or a spawn here. And I kind of listen because I'm like, well, you guys have more experience, probably like a wider exposure to lots of people playing the same map than I do. Because people are watching like lots of different streamers while they're doing other stuff and like see these spots. Whereas like if you're just playing, you won't necessarily see these spots. But anyway, that being said, I just think that there's, even simply, you could have like low spawn chance, medium spawn chance, high spawn chances, right? And then you've got bosses, which is kind of another thing. And you could have like low spawn chance in certain areas for like high-end stuff. So very occasionally you get a class 6 plate, medium spawn chance, which is maybe that is the bosses themselves, where they have like a chance to spawn with something in their bag. And then high spawn chance is like Kibber or something that's like demarked to be like a good place. And that's got a mixture of things. It's got class 6 plates, it's got bastions in there, but it's also got class 4s and like some other things. So it's not just like concentrated like one area, but it has to be a bit of a pain to get to. You have to go to pull the lever and do that. Then there's PvP, and it's like a super hot spot. If you want to go to the really risky place, you got to, go through the risk to get it. But there's other ways, there's other ways. I think that's the thing. It's not just like one place.
I just want
that kind of idea.
Comment on something real quick I see in chat. Because likely if you're having that thought, others are probably having that thought as well. So talking about the loot and annoyance of like loot spots. The it's being made that there are plenty, the argument, it's like, well, the counter argument is like, well, there's plenty of, maps, just go on Map Genie Online. It's like, I can understand what you're saying, but as in, try to remember as a news player when you're going in. And I kind of hate this argument because it's just like, oh, just pull up a map, and it's like that you're so overwhelmed with so much in Tarkov that like, how many times have you when you're learning the game, you went to like loot a juice and it's like, oh, that's not an actual juice. Oh, okay. I guess that's not a real loot spawn then. You know what I mean? It's like how am I supposed to know to check? It's like, I just feel like it's a bad design when like the way to pass the skill check the game is providing you is to open up an outside resource of the game to tell you what to do. It'd be like if you were playing a PUBG, right? And like there wasn't no map, but there was a map on a website, and you had to like log in. You and your buddies could log in, and you could like ping on the map where to go, and it will like, whatever, like integrate into the game. But it was like, why is this like even a thing? It just should be in the game. You know what I mean? Like there just should be something there. And it sucks because like when you go to the loot, like I could see something on a box, but not really know what it is. Like if it's even an item and not just like a roll object until I get like right up to it, and then I get a context menu. You know what I mean? It's just like there's no unique identifier to it, and it makes it like very frustrating, like so easy to like miss loot. And the thing that I hate about loot spots is people will say, oh yeah, I found this item here, and I'm just like, hey, how do I know you're not lying? You know what I mean? It's like, I'm just supposed to like believe, like basically anything that anyone says is a loot spot. I just have to like accept as like potential fact and always check it, because Billy said he found a LEDX in the back of this, ambulance van on customs one day. So apparently that's a LEDX spawn. Be sure to check it every time. Meanwhile, me playing 100 raids on the same map, never seen the, it's just like, I hate it. Anyways, side tangent right over.
Especially those rare ones. They are a bit annoying sometimes. Like I almost wish that like something would spawn there in some ways, rather than just being like nothing.
Empty,
like,
then you would know. It would like be a confirmation, right?
Yeah, that there's actually a spawn for something. Whereas, it's like some of the keycard spots. It's like nothing spawns there except for when it does.
Yes. And it's so bad too, because I like won't even check them, because it's just like I've checked them hundreds of times and not seen the thing. So it's just like it kind of like falls it away. Like I've become so adept to checking the guaranteed stuff because it's been a reliable way to make money. It's just like and it's like not even that it's fun. I'm sure getting a red key card's exciting the first time, but it's like it doesn't. It's not like I'm excited to go to labs to swipe the red key card. That's not where the values in. Anyways, one thing I did want to jump back to was you were talking about bars and tying it in with like your analogy to StarCraft, where you said there's like this rock paper scissors of strategy with resource management, where it's like, is my strategy going to be Zerg? I'm just gonna like put all my resources into like smaller units and like overwhelm the opposition, or am I gonna go for like a more late game, build up a lot of like factories that kind of like compound on each other to build the big giant mech, whatever. I've played like 1 or 2 matches of StarCraft 2. Like I have no idea what I'm talking about, but you know what I'm saying. So Italian the Tarkov, it's kind of like similar how you're describing, like, am I gonna prioritize the hideout? Am I gonna like forego that? Like this is one interesting aspect is it's like not uncommon that like PvP streamers will say, people that are like high skilled at the game, and playing for a long time, they just like ignore the hideout, which has been less relevant since that they've like locked some stuff behind the hideout. I think like now it's pretty optimal, especially with the XP degradation you get with the wet floor or broken wall, whichever one it is. So I don't know. That may be a thing of the past, but regardless, there's absolutely different people prioritize different aspects, right? You could go for leveling traders. It's like I'm solely going to focus on that. You could go, I'm just going to focus on the hideout. And there's people that I know that I've heard of anyways who don't even play PMC, and they just play scav till like they have like a bankroll of a couple million and a junk box, and they're like, okay, I'm ready to play now. Or maybe you go for flea market strategy where you're gonna like grind to 15, and then you're gonna start just like selling everything, and you're just gonna sell stuff in flea market. There's tons of different things you could do, and you could do a mix of any one of those. But as you progress to Tarkov, like the biggest bar, the widest bar is arguably XP, because there's just some things you cannot get in the game without doing XP, leveling traders. And whether or not that's valuable to you is up for the individual to decide. And I do think that in the past, when it was, I think, almost explicitly not true, where anything was sellable on the flea market, to my knowledge, like, I don't even think we had the concept of flea market bans back then. There was no fountain array, there was no bans. It was just like anything and everything goes. Except for maybe Bitcoin, there's like a few exceptions. But anyways, it kind of made XP somewhat optional if not entirely optional.
Yeah.
Because then you could just like basically scav and PMC and just focus on making money, which I think is like a very friendly, kind of like that COD aspect we were talking about earlier, where it's like I'm just gonna turn my brain off. I mean, not necessarily, but it's just like I'm just like a person existing in the game, and I'm just playing it outside of the game at large. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
I'm only going to interact with this very small little
Mhm.
slice of pie, which I think was fun for a lot of people. You kill the Giga Chad, you get all the gear, you go to sell on a flea. It's like, wow, number go up. That was fun. I'm gonna do that again. And it's kind of an underdog challenge too, which I think is like also a very like cool dynamic. The rat and Chad. Um, but getting to where I'm trying to head here is, currently now it's XP is still like kind of like the big funnel, but I think the problem with XP is it's like comes to like a dead end at a certain point, and it like loses its value a lot. Like arguably 15 is like a really big milestone, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it's got to be the one of the biggest. And then there's like a little bit more milestones you go up and up, and then once you get like past 42, it starts to like really fall off. I mean, there's
Yeah.
like a couple of like 50s and 40s and maybe 60, 55, but if it's like, again, because the XP requirement also exponentially increases, so it's like it's asking a lot more of work effectively for you to get these like smaller milestones. So that starts
Yeah.
to fall off a lot. And let's say the bar for XP is at like 9.5, right? And the bar only goes up. There isn't, to my knowledge, any bar of XP that goes down, right? There's no opposite pressure. You don't like
Mm,
lose XP. Like
no.
you don't get XP taken away, unlike
No.
rubles, right? If I spend money on item, go into raid, die, item gets looted, don't insure it, whatever, that's like gone, right? So
Yeah.
there's like a interesting thing where you're talking about these bars and how they feel very like they just go up and they stay up. And I feel like what we need, maybe not for XP, but for some of the other areas, is like we need opposite pressure applied. And it becomes a game of the late game, or maybe the whole game is all about managing bars, which in essence, in little essence, is like the core of a survival game is managing resource bars. Typically,
Mhm.
you know, health and some type of like survival based idea, like water or
Yeah.
sanity or whatever. So I just think that if they were able to craft something that could accommodate that, and you have to do it carefully because you don't want, like, it would be really bad if at the start of your journey, right, you're only able to produce like 1 unit out of 10 for each individual bar, whether it's like hideout, money, XP, whatever, and the negative pressures are like -4. So it's like, I have to like put all my resources into this one bar and then just like take negatives in the other ones. Like that's not good, right? Like, and then you don't want it also to where like it's at the end and it's like you want the scaling to be proportional to how much you're able to produce, right? So like if I'm able to produce 6 points into a single bar, let's say, then I want some type of like counter pressure to like equally match that, like
Yeah.
I don't think this is all just like made up on the fly, but I hope I'm like able to convey of what I'm getting at here. Cause then the idea is like to tie it into what Giga was talking about with loot and raid. Once I level up the traders and money is basically no object because like the hideout itself is like a generator of like bar progression, right? In terms of like rubles. Um, and that like kind of grows to what you max the hideout. It's just like it only goes anyways. Um, and then you get max traders, and now you can get the Colt Termite plate, right? And that's like I've maxed out the trader bar, which is kind of like the XP bar,
Yeah.
and rubles aren't really a thing. It's like what am I supposed to do now for management? And I think a lot of people make the argument, or maybe they just prefer that this is the point of the game, is like, now that all my bars are maxed out, I have become Giga Chad. Now it's my turn to go on customs and stomp little Billy from getting his someone says church likes bars. God. Now it's my turn to go on customs and stomp little Billy from getting his pocket watch quest. And like, I kind of get the power fantasy thing, and I think we talked about it before, but I find like it's a fun thing once or twice, maybe. It gets very stale to keep level. I'm trying to think of the word to replace bars, but I can't. To keep leveling up the bars to max and then becoming the Giga Chad.
Yeah. I think the issue is that a lot of this progression, like it only goes one way, really. Rubles is the only one that goes down, but because of the way that, if you're good at the game and you optimize or whatever, then like that doesn't go down either. So you just end up you're either getting more wealthy, or at the beginning of the wipe, you're like investing in stuff that will make you more wealthy, So like even if you're not getting that many rubles now, it's like you're building the producers of rubles, right? You're spending rubles to build. Exactly. You're investing, right? So that's fine. But then this is the whole. It comes full circle, right back to like why the ruble economy itself ends up like being an issue, and it's not necessarily a problem per se. And some people prefer the game to be able to buy everything, but in terms of incentives, like you end up running out of incentives to actually go into raid. Like, what am I going in for other than to kill people? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. If you like that, then that's okay. But for the overall general player base, most people will want something more than just going into fight for PvP, right? People will want to go in for that as well as some other incentive to actually go in. Because it's just like, well, I'm just going to go and hunt for PvP. What does that even really mean, right? It's like people will just want fun PvP, but like if you've got nothing to get, then it's like, well, then I don't need to go anywhere. I don't really have a plan. I can also play much more passively and just kill you. Is that necessarily as fun? And then people get annoyed because it's like, oh, then nobody moves. It's like, yeah, but they've got no goals. Like, why should they move? They're literally there to kill you. That's it. That's the only reason. So they're just gonna sit around or creep around and hear you and whatever. So that's why I feel that like having these like consumable items, like ammo, like plates, like armor, whatever it is, having those things and the best things in the raid short circuits this, because you can get as many rubles as you like, but if you can't buy 338 Pure Magnum AP, then, well, there's something to go and do, right? And people don't farm those kind of things right now because it's not interesting to go and farm them. How do you farm those things? Oh, you just go to the loose ammo spawns 16 billion times and hope you get lucky. Like, that's not interesting enough to make it worthwhile. It's a bit like back when, like, the argument I made in my video was like when they had armor in stashes, like farming stashes, people just did that anyway, but like people didn't really farm that just for the 1 in 200 chance or 500 chance of getting a slick in there. It's just like, oh, it's just something that happened, right? It's like it's too distributed and widespread to make it an interesting thing to go and do, and it's also not difficult enough to put the good stuff in there. So that's why Kibble works. It's like, it gives people a thing to fight over, and like, yeah, getting to the end game doesn't necessarily mean I must have the best stuff in the game every single raid. It's like I can have the best stuff available to me every single raid, and in order to increase that to like, so my character is like, as it is now, plate, death shadow, cult termite, whatever. Like, those things I need to go and fetch in raid. Like, maybe I can get the class 6 ceramic plate from the trader. Maybe I can go and get, the condors off the trader. But if I want the death shadow, I have to find it in Kibble, or I have to find it somewhere else. I have to go and get it. And so it gives people still something to do to become the ultimate Chad. And because those things also degrade, then you have to keep going and doing it to go and get the best stuff.
You give me a bit of epiphany, and I'm gonna try to cook it up here when I'm thinking, but it might not come out great. So I was thinking, well, why do I need to go for the, like, what's the incentive to go for the termite? Like, go for the high stuff thing, and it's like just to become the Chad. It's like, well, I don't know if that's like counter to what we're saying. So I wonder if, like, what if the incentive, like, almost like you need the different means productions to like feed into each other, like feed off each other, I guess. And it's like, what if the reason becomes not to go and get the Lupua AP to kill people? It's like, it becomes like, I need to get this, that way it will help me survive, so I could produce money, and to use that money to like keep some other engine going that helps me go into raids to get the AP. You know what I mean? It's like they need to like one bucket goes into another bucket, and that bucket goes in the other bucket, and then that bucket goes back in the other bucket, and they all kind of like.
I know what you mean. I don't know how you. I don't know. Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't have an idea of how you actually structure it that way. But I do know what you mean. It's almost like,
It's almost like you need like let's say like the bare minimum to enter the raid costs like this much, but it's not even like great stuff. It's just like, this is what you need. These are like your daily operating costs. You have to meet this, right? It's like, how am I going to meet this? It's like, well, if I had really good gear, this would be really easy to do, right? But I can't just like take my daily operating costs and take out a loan and get it. I gotta like do something. So I gotta spend this money to buy this crappy gear and like roll the metaphorical dice to see if I can get the good gear. And then once I get the good gear, then I can use that to get other like maybe it's like get hideout, like a new item in the it's came out. It's called I don't know, Prapper's. I'm too degenerate. I'm too degenerate. I'm sorry. Let's call it like hideout scrap. Okay. And this is a new item, and every station needs one to be able to do this. And you can it's basically the MC converter. Like you can only get it in raid, right? So like if I want to upgrade workbench, I have to go into raid and get the thing. And why do I want to upgrade workbench? Because workbench is going to give me more money, so I can have better like low to mid tier gear to get the better gear, which is going to help me survive to get the workbench scrap to make more money so I can do, what I mean? It's like there's like got to be something there. And then maybe your hideout stuff like degrades over time, like you got to replace. Like I feel like there's something there. It's very complex, but the general core idea is like, give me incentives to keep playing the game past, whatever, like past 15, past 42, past 69. I don't even know what them.
Like there's a couple of things that you've just made me think of. Like one is, you can add like a new currency.
Yeah.
GP coin from Arena is like an example of this. Not necessarily a great example because you're going and playing a different game to do it, but it's an example. You can't get some of these things without GP coin. You can have as many rubles as you like because those things aren't convertible per se. You could kind of argue that there is a way that you move the money and then you re-roll the stuff, whatever. You still have to go and do the thing in Arena to go and like earn the GP. So that's kind of like one thing. The other thing, because I'm just thinking about like in terms of like what systems actually exist in game, that's already been allocated to ref now. You could do something similar to Bitcoin if you wanted to get rid of that in the game, but I don't think they're going to. You also have like the finding raid system, and I've always kind of liked the idea of like like finding raid barter type thing. Like your fence will give you like a daily finding raid barter, and it's something like really good, but you have to choose like one of three things. The only issue with that is that like incentivizes even more the Tarkov meta, which is just like hoarding. I'm going to have 20 junk boxes, and just like you almost need, I don't know, and it seems kind of silly. It's like you almost need a system where it's like you accept the thing and then you have to go and do it like now. Like the stuff you saved up doesn't work. Like you could do that in a different way. Like finding raid is then a bad example because that feels bad for the player. It's like, oh, you need to find T plugs, but you need to find like new T plugs after they're getting the quest. Like the old T plugs you've got on finding raid don't exist. It's like finding raid, which kind of feels terrible. It sucks. So you'd have to do something else, and you'd have to be like, it'd have to be like Fence's like quest. He has to get you to go and get an item that goes in the quest stash thing. To be completely separate from the existing items. It's like Fence wants you to go and get this item. It's like a random task that something appears somewhere on the map and you have to like go and grab it, and then you can once a day you can go and get your like good barter or whatever. Like something like that then doesn't, again, that incentivizes you to go into raid to go get a thing that's not really possible to get because now the things aren't on the traders anymore, because like all of these systems are moot points. If you can buy the stuff on the traders, you're not going to go do Fence's stupid task, which is like half of the problem, like, and that's why I think it's an issue, because there's no incentive to go in and get anything because you've basically won, right? If you get to level like max level and you can buy all the things, you've got all the stuff, you got like 100 million rubles, and you can kit yourself out in Chad gear, and you loot a player and they have nothing that you can upgrade at all because you've got all the best gear already. It's like you've won the game, right? Like that's it, you won the game.
Yeah, it becomes so weird in the late game because it's like you're effectively killing each other over gear, and like, but you can always buy the gear, but you're just looting it just to like have it on hand. Like it becomes much more about like
And to take it away from
mitigating.
them as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there is something satisfying about looting someone. No matter how much money you got, it's like, oh, they're decked out. It's a lot of money. Like, it's still somewhat relevant, although I could argue. But anyways, it's just like you're at some point you're just like maximizing time, like enjoyment in the game. Like, what's let me buy another weapons case just to put in all these parts so that way I can just like easily click assemble gun and it's just gonna rip everything from, you know what I mean? It's just like this weird, I don't know. I could go on, but um I won't. So yeah, I mean, it's not really what I wanted to necessarily talk about, but I'm glad we're kind of here because it is something like I feel like there's something there, and I think with Tarkov, like I think for me, Tarkov, the big like thing that makes Tarkov so good is you get like a very intense survival experience
Hmm.
and like a 45-minute package, right? And part of that 45 is time spent outside the raid, whether it's like hideout crafting, stash management, it's like this kind of like mini game experience, and you're not committed to something like Rust or Foxhole where it's like the game is a lot like, it's like living and breathing. Like Tarkov is kind of like that, but also kind of not. So, and there's like pros and cons with
Yeah.
that. And I think the big pro is it makes it much more approachable to a wider audience to be able to have that experience. And whatever, and this hypothetical, theory craft that we're talking about, I feel like you would want to have it fit into that mold. Like I wouldn't want it to be punishing where if I don't log in for 4 days, then
Hmm.
all the negative pressure being applied, I'm going to come back and all my work's going to be progress is going to be wiped that I had.
Yeah, I think that's the issue. Like they had, they've had concepts like this before, like memory, where like your skills degrade over time and
Yeah.
stuff, and like
Yeah.
it just feels bad, right? It just feels bad
Yeah.
as a player. So you want the loss to be to do with your experience, right? And I think that's why the rubles thing is okay, because it's like you died and you lost everything. All right, there you go. That's that. Um,
Well, they need to do the inverse, like what WoW did, where instead of punishing players for playing longer, you reward players for just playing. Like they gave like what like a 50%, like they if you played for like the first hour of the day, let's say you get like a bonus
mm,
50%. That's great, and you know what I mean. It's like it benefits everyone versus like, oh, if you play for 4 hours, then you're gonna start taking penalties, and that compounds on itself and etc. Like that doesn't feel
yeah,
great, and like
yeah,
also the person that can only play an hour a day isn't getting rewarded either. Like they're just not getting punished. So like, what if we just like it's
yeah,
effectively the same concept of as like daily logins, for like different apps and games.
yeah. I just don't think like I can. Yeah, I kind of see it. I just don't think the degradation works well in
Mm,
general, unless it's something like the hideout's got a maintenance cost or whatever. I just don't like about your character. I just don't think that would be good. You'd have to be very careful about it, basically, otherwise it doesn't really
yeah.
work. Like the hideout could have some maintenance cost, and it could be, it could be in relation to kind of how high level it is. Like that kind of makes sense, right? Like uses more fuel or needs more maintenance or whatever, right? It's like the fully decked out Bitcoin farm with a workbench level 3 and a water filter and all this stuff is like clearly more like harder to maintain than the bucket in the toilet that you start with. So that is sort of makes sense as well. But yeah, I don't know. Like there's a point at which you make it too complicated or too like
Mm,
it's too much bother to be like fussing constantly with stuff breaking or stuff going wrong or
yeah,
like
for
it's just like
sure. I
it
can totally
becomes
see
annoying.
that.
It's yeah, so it's like it's very very hard, which is why I sort of thought about like just moving away from that and just getting to the point of being like you don't necessarily need negative pressure. You just like
Mm,
take away some of the top end, like the very final little bits that you're like getting through with rubles, and you can play the game just fine with all of the stuff that's in there right now that you'll be able to get to as an end game player. But if just a couple of those things are not there, people will want to go and get them. It's like,
yeah,
oh
I think
well, I
so. I
don't I
think it
don't
would
have
be
those things.
I think it would be an improvement overall.
And you
Like
know what? It's not a
I
big change, actually. It's not that big of a change. It
it's really
really
not.
isn't. And I also, for the record, think that the early game works quite well. and that the mid game works quite well. I think the Tarkov economy
Oh
in the
yeah,
it's broadly in the best place it's been in, right? Like the early wipe used to get completely decimated. We're gonna have to
especially
see
the
about this
ammo
wipe if finding raid.
changes.
Yeah, so with the ammo changes and stuff, like this wipe's going to be its own special one. So I'm not sure yet how that's going to play out, but you know, it's still the early wipe's still pretty good, and it's just especially when we have like a 7-month long wipe. It's like we're
Yeah,
really like just tweaking stuff here. Like the game works fine. You know, if they didn't change anything, like I'm not going to be heartbroken. It's just I think that there's like
for
always room for
sure.
improvement.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Mm.
definitely agree with that sentiment. So moving on, because there's a lot of stuff we gotta get through today. I just want to touch on a few more. Like we haven't even really gotten to the meat. I was gonna say, but just one thing was talking about the wipe and the changes and what we're coming into. Because trader flipping still exists, which like I really hope they do something about. I don't know. Yeah, I really don't like that concept. And here's why. I feel like it disproportionately, which I think we talked about before, but I feel like it disproportionately hurts new players, or not even just new players, like people who can commit. It rewards people who can commit more time, more resources, like literal, you know, human value time, and also
Mm-hmm.
like in-game resources. And I just think that's not good, like healthy, because um with like the HK barrel is like a classic example that I go to. I remember like back when the HK was like the meta gun, right? It was just like people would sell the long one, like I think it's 18 or 20, I don't even remember. Um they would flip it on the buy it from the trader and flip it on the market, and it would sell out like within the first minute, however
Mm-hmm.
many Peacekeeper had. And you know, you could be like, oh well, now they're just gonna limit, you know, one per person per reset. But it's still like, however, let's say there's 400 people that had, it's still like 400 being flooded on the market, right? Like, you know, let's say we're 2 weeks in the wipe and someone's already got max traders and now they're flipping HK barrels. They're just like, and there's like 400 of these people. They're just dumping 400 onto the market, which is like very chaotic. And then also the way like there's so many things that just like affect the Tarkov market. It's so crazy. Like you could have a listing for an HK barrel for like 1,000,000 rubles, right? And then suddenly the trader reset happens, and suddenly there's just like all these HK barrels on the trader, and so they buy them for like this really low price. You know, maybe it's like 30K. I don't know. Um, and then now they just dump it onto the market, and then suddenly the price of HK barrels just like drops because there's like 400 of these being like flown on the market when there's only one being sold for 1,000,000. And that was like in a matter of like minutes, right? And then as that time progresses to the next trader reset, you know, it like slowly scales up. This is like when you look at the charts of any item, it's so like dramatic and bouncy. Like there'll be like one big spike, and then it's like starts to settle down to its normal price. And I just think that's like really unhealthy, because you're like getting compound rewards for like playing more and being better at the game, like more skilled in an environment where the game wants to simulate a uncertainty element by not having,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because that's one of the nice things about, and you know, also a bit of a con to matchmaking, is like the game's placing you where it thinks your skill level's at. And whether or not that's accurate doesn't necessarily matter, but that can be like kind of a, you know, bit of a daunting thing, is like I'm at this skill level and the matches are like very close, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
and it's challenging in an aspect where it's very consistently challenging. You know, it's like you always have to perform. Like any single mistake could be the mistake that costs you the game. You know, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's basically a game of, especially in lower ranks, and probably even true in like higher ranks, but especially in lower ranks, which team made the less mistakes is basically the name of the game. You know, and there's like a compound to that where it's like who made the mistake and got away with it. You know, there's this idea
Yeah.
of like punishing mistakes. You know, it's like if It's like another. Anyways, I'm going far off topic, so let me reel back in. I just think that is just a really bad future where not only do you get all the rewards that come with a higher level trader and all the benefits, now you get this extra influx of money, and it's just like, and you're selling it to people below, like beneath you, on like some in the resource XP economy market. I just don't think it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think there's a subset of players that it's going to work for. There's like, it's the small group of people who know what they're doing, but don't necessarily play that much and play quite efficiently. They will do quite well. Like, you know, if they don't revert any finding raid, or if they don't change any of the finding raid stuff, like things that are going to be really good in the mid game, basically from level 15 and onwards. I say mid game, but like, you know, people are going to get there pretty quickly. Are going to be like, you need people to get to like level 3. It depends where they put the ammo, but if they get to like in the existing format, if they get to level 3 and 4 traders and then start selling stuff back down, the stuff that's going to end up being really good is like 762 PP, FMJ for the MP7, and CBJ for the MCX. That's in the current system, because those things like vastly outperform the ammo that that is available to you at that same time, and also is, you know, listable on the flea market and will be worth the money, right? Like, I don't know if it'll be more expensive than now, because the thing is, like, not everybody will go and do that. Like, the actual like newbies won't know to do it, and it would cost them too much money to do that anyway, because they're just going to die. But you know, you can buy, like, CBJ is 58 damage and 43 pen. If they change nothing, it's like being able to buy a better version of, like, it's basically 85501, right? It's actually a better version of 85501. My 58 damage and 43 pen versus 5501, which is 49 damage and 44 pen. So it's got one less pen, but it's got a lot more damage, like 7 or something, and 9 actually, 9 more damage. So it's similar to, and it's got more armor damage too, so it's better against high tier stuff. So you'll just be like, it probably won't be necessary straight away, but you know, once people start getting definitely class 5, but like, you know, class 4 armor, you're just going to eat them with CBJ. And the same with 762 PP as well. So you've got 762 PP is 55 damage and 41 pen. Like, it's not quite as good, but it's usually a bit cheaper. It's more of a, like, that's more of a mid game round. But that's going to eat class 4 for breakfast. It's like no problem with that. And then yeah, in the MP7, like, FMJ is just awesome. You know, the fire rate is so fast. It's hard to get anything that's got, you know, similar pen. Like, the only thing that's really similar maybe is like 45 AP. That's got a lot of damage, but about the same pen, and like PvP. But those things they're not allowed on the flea. Like, only FMJ has been one of the few SMG rounds that's got like 40 pen that's been allowed on the flea for ages. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
I think it's a mistake to sell ammo, but people inevitably will, because it's gonna sell for a lot. Because why was this gonna sell for a lot? Because it's going to be valuable for people that need money, right? It's like, you remember when Ngolnik was, and N995 was on the market? And what was like the common, like, there was just some like ethos about this idea: if you want to like defeat someone, buy the best ammo. It's like, if you're going to cheap on anything, don't cheap on the ammo. And it's like, why is that true? Well, it's because if you do encounter the class 6 Giga Chad and you do kill them, they're probably decked out, and you could sell all their stuff on the market. So in the end, that expensive ammo in that very specific scenario paid for itself, right? It's like you could basically opt in to the armor system or not in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing's going to happen. It's just a bit on like a less wider scale. And like, in my mind, the best thing to do, like, this is like a very, you know, high, like, I don't want to be like high level, but it's like, if I sell ammo, I'm like kind of hurting myself. So instead, what I should do is like sell them the thing that's like valuable, but not so valuable that's going to like directly affect me, or like affect me as much as a different item. So like a good example of this would be like gunsmith parts, right? Because they help you get a little bit of EXP, but I'm not giving you the thing that's going to defeat me. You know what I mean? And it's still like should be fairly valuable, we'll see. I mean, there will be an influx of. This is like the thing that I don't like about the economy, because I think someone brought this up in one of the comments. Is like, oh, the market, I can't remember what it was, but it's like more supply obviously means the price is going to go down. It's like, well, that's not entirely true, because we're talking like more supply and like spike periods of time. It's like when the trader resets, suddenly there's a flood of items. So like if you're very opportunistic about this, you could buy your stuff and then wait till like the last hour or last 30 minutes before the trader resets to list your item, because then someone's going to be like, oh man, I don't want to like sit here and wait for 30 minutes or whatever to, just so they'll just buy it. And it's like, you could really profit off this stuff, and it's like
It's free real estate.
it's free real estate, baby. Oh my god. I just really hope, I don't know. We'll see. I just think that's something they like. It seems like such an obvious thing to do, because I just feel like, how have we not learned from this in the past, that this was like a bad thing?
Yeah.
The fact that traders could flip, it's just like, ugh.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's the thing. I'll say again, it works for a very specific small portion of the player base. For everybody else, it ends up just making the Timmies have to fight stuff that's really hard, which, is kind of whatever. But it also means that the people who grind just get this like massive boost and pull away from everybody else, because you get there first, right? And it just kind of gives you more like free money. And like, free money is a weird thing in Tarkov, because it's like, you invest in stuff and invest in your character to get more levels so that you can get more resources. And like the Bitcoin farm is kind of part of that. But it's like partly why the game ends up like not being very interesting. Like, we're thinking about these other things. Like, if rubles was still hard to get at the end, then then you'd almost be like, I'm just, oh god, I got so many thoughts going through my head about this right now. But like, if rubles was still difficult to get in the end game, then the game would still sort of be more interesting in terms of like actually having to be careful and like surviving and whatever. You reach this tipping point where the amount of money that you end up having, and because the game is sort of like an exponential game in some ways, right? It's like Mafia
Linear or
Wars on
exponential.
Facebook or whatever.
Yeah.
You like back in the day, you play these like stupid like clicker games, or like there was like one's called like Mafia Wars, I remember, and it's like it's like it's another exponential game where you get so much, you start investing in like small stuff, and then you get some money, then you get one of the next thing, and it's like you get more and more money like infinitely. Tarkov's like kind of like that in some ways, and you hit a certain threshold where now you just make so much money that the money's no longer a problem anymore. So the Bitcoin farm is almost like its own issue. And again, it's kind of reared its head again because they're 850k now. Like back when they were 160k, it was much less of a problem. Now it's more of a problem again, and everyone's got billions and billions of rubles, right? Like in the wipes where the Bitcoins were under 200k the whole wipe, like I had lots less money than I do now. It's just like pure and simple. Every time you go in there, every day, there's another million rubles waiting for you, basically. And it just like destroys the economy, because the money, and like, yes, there's item inflation, but the issue is that, like, for the cult termite, right, most of these endgame things rely on barters, because the barter system works with the player economy, right? If you've got this endgame stuff on the trader, it's a fixed amount, and BSG aren't going to be spending their time faffing about and making the items more expensive on the traders, so they stick them into a barter. They let the market do the work, which is kind of sensible in some ways. But you get to a certain point in time where, because there's a set spawn rate for SAS drives, that ends up being what drives the market, not just like the inflation, right? The inflation of like everyone having tons of money only takes you so far. At some point, it's then driven, like the more important input is like how much SAS drives spawn and how many people are farming them, rather than how much money people actually have. So you get to a situation now where, like, I bought some SAS drives the other day for like 250k each for Cult Termite plate, and like, yeah, that's hella expensive. But even relative to the like 120 mil in my account, it still doesn't matter. It's not meaningful. And because the barters are linked to something in the economy that your people are looting at a set rate, it doesn't keep up, right? Like, it doesn't keep up one-to-one with the amount of money that people have. Those two things aren't necessarily intrinsically linked together. Like, there's an effect, but they're not linked together. So you almost need like the end, like, if you almost need the items to actually, because people talk about it like inflating, but you almost need to actually have the items inflate like the player base does, right? If a cult termite plate was 5 mil, right, this would be a bit of a different conversation. right?
Yeah.
It's because a Bastion plate is 2x and a Cult Termite is a SAS drive, and then you can craft the ACPC. And the Bastion helmet itself is on Ragman for 60k. Like the Death Shadows, again, it's on the flea market, but people are buying them off the trader and they're circulating infinitely around the economy, like we talked about last time. Like it's all of this stuff that makes it actually, like people think the prices are expensive. I would actually argue that everything's quite cheap on a relative basis. The flea market for endgame items, like you can load yourself out with endgame items for under 1 million rubles. Like I think that's like I could run 125 raids of endgame items, die every single time, and only just then run out of money. Like that's an insane situation to be in, and that's partly because of the hideout. Like, I don't actually play that much, but I have my hideout max, so it's working for me while we're on the cast, while I'm writing scripts, while I'm doing whatever. You know, I've had like a bunch of conversations with people, mostly on YouTube comments, actually, with people like, oh, these streamers, you can play for like 4 million hours a day. And I'm just like, dude, honestly, I play 10 hours a week. I have to tell, how many people do I have to tell? I literally play 10 hours a week. So, you know, like my character and my experience is not the casual player's experience, because I'm thinking about the game all the time, but it's like, it's almost a thought experiment in like, how much can you do with as little time possible invested, like IRL, in the actual game, which is kind of interesting. Like often people are like, yeah, I get like so many random things. People being less like, oh, streamers play the game, like, you know, people like you just are not in touch with the player base, and it's just like, okay, we'll have a look at the time, and then they're like, okay, fine. And then other people are like, you know, oh, is this your main account? I've had that like so many times. I've told you about this before. So many times, like, oh, is this your main account? Like, did you reset? And I'm like, no, like this is my main account. Like, and then we look at the stats. And people are like, there's quite often people are just like, they're like, wow, like that happens less now. I'm also just after max traders. And they're just like, how are you level 45 with so few raids? And I'm like, well, because I don't dick about. Like every raid, I'm like trying to like do this and this quest and that quest and stack these things together and get this XP and you know, do this and like get the money from this and like try and keep my survival rate high so I don't die. And like, it's just like it's efficient. It's like I'm trying to do it efficient based on like IRL. Like, you can get to max traders with playing in tons of raids. That's not actually that difficult necessarily. But, like, I don't want to put in a ton of time, you know? I want to put in the amount of time that's necessary because I've got other stuff to do, right? I'm running the YouTube channel, which is, it's about Tarkov. I'm not playing the game when I'm doing anything to do with YouTube. And then I want to spend time with my family, right? Those are kind of the three things that I, like, do broadly. You know? It's,
I'd be interested to know, like, what the average, you know, what people place in their minds of, like, you know, average Joe versus streamer, what the actual hours looks like in terms of average Joe. Like, is it 4 hours a week? Is it 8 hours? Like, I would love to know the statistics, because I wonder if you're like slightly above average or like above average, but you're not like streamer level who's playing like 40 plus hours a week. You know what I mean? Like, those are like the point, I don't know, 5% of the player base, maybe 1%. I'm not sure, honestly, but I just wonder, like, you know, maybe 10 hours a week is a bit more, maybe it's a bit less than what the average Joe gets to play. Because, like, I mean, think of like on a weekend, you know, if you want to play like Friday, Saturday, you could easily fit 10 hours in, especially on a Saturday.
That's true.
I mean, maybe not the whole Saturday, but, you know, Friday night, maybe you play like 4 hours.
Yeah.
Maybe stay up late, play for 6 hours, and then you got another 4 on the weekend. Like, I don't know. It seems pretty doable to me. Sunday as well. I mean, you could probably get in more, honestly.
Yeah.
Than what
if
Giga
you really
plays.
were dedicated, yeah. Like, that's the thing. Like, I don't play at all at the weekend. Like, I don't play at all. And I think that's the thing that cuts down my hours a lot. Like, but it's kind of cool in some ways because people see what I play from end to end, except certain specific events and like maybe a scav run here and there. Like, I don't play any PMC off stream really, but I do like 3.5 hours.
Actually, you did shoreline training, skill training. That counts against you. -1 point.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Remember, I did that on one stream the one time, and people were coming in, like opening the stream up, being like, "What is this? Like, what is this?" Don't need to do that anymore. Arena. Don't need to do it now.
Yeah.
Play a few rounds of arena, get vitality to 3. Don't need to do it anymore. The shoreline like barbed wire run is dead. So long as it does actually link up, because my arena account will not stay synchronized to my main Tarkov account. It's extremely annoying. I got it to synchronize at level 53, and then I got to level 55 in game, and I went back to arena, and I was level 53, and I was just like, why? Surely this is so easy. Like, oh god, it's really annoying.
And they said no one would ever play arena. Checkmate, rats. Get owned.
Exactly. What were we even talking about before I ranted about playtime?
Only
Free
only
market or
chat
something.
knows.
I don't know. Yeah, only chat
I
knows.
got.
I'm not even sure.
What do you want to do from here? Because we got like 5 minutes, and like I'm kind of already stuck on this topic, and I got like one or two more things I want to try like squeeze in. Like, are you fine carrying over our other two topics to next week?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm just gonna like just random, kind of it's related, but someone had commented on a previous video about, um, while we had we talked a lot about the Bastion plate, right? And someone commented, which I kind of see a similar, I see the sentiment in various places, but I think it's just an interesting thing to dwell on for a bit. Is why is it OP in reference to the Bastion plate when everyone can get it? 2 eggs is nothing. And someone responded, "That's the point. It's too easy and inexpensive to get, which means it's the only thing people go for nowadays." And I think that it's kind of a, and like Call of Duty, for example, I guess Call of Duty isn't a great example, but whatever. It's like there's a gun and like anyone can get it, right? And they're, it's fine. Like, why are we dwelling so much on accessibility? Like, and it's like, well, it's different because Call of Duty, in this fake believe Call of Duty, I have to like use modern Call of Duty does not work like this, but back in the day, you played the multiplayer and you had all the stuff. Maybe there was some stuff like whatever, doesn't matter. The point I'm trying to make is me trying to be as accurate as possible. The point I'm trying to make is that is indeed the point. Is like if you played Counter-Strike and the op was like 100K instead of like 5,000. I said 100K. If the op was like $1,000 versus I think it's like 5,000 and some change, then it would be really OP, and no one would use like. It would just like drastically change how the game is played. Like you would probably have like within the second, after maybe even during the pistol round, someone would buy an op. You know what I mean? It would just be like it would just change the game drastically. And it's like effectively what we're saying here is like because this item is so like good and just the way the economics of it all works, it's probably a little too good.
Yeah. I think that comment sums up like the community in a little nutshell, I think. Because some people are of that opinion. It's like, well, everyone can get it. But they say everybody, right? Let's go back to the polls for a second. 61% of the people on my YouTube channel cannot get it based on their level. Caveats aside about statistics. But a lot of people just can't get this thing. The only way to get it is to get to 42 and then buy the eggs off the flea, right? So it's like, it's not an even distribution. You can't get it at all, and then you suddenly can. In as unlimited, unless like in one per reset, but in effectively unlimited quantities if you stock up a little bit. So that's like part of it, right? But it's like what you were talking about with the balance. This is just balancing. If you make one thing way better than all the other choices with no downside, people will just pick that one thing. Is that necessarily an issue? Not necessarily. Like, is it breaking the game that the Bastion plate is so good and it's on the Bastion it's class 6, class 4? Not necessarily. Is the game unplayable because of it? Like, also no. Is the game less interesting? Yes. Does it stop you from making meaningful decisions? Yes. You know, like, and this is the thing, right? It's like, if it's limiting the choice, it's limiting the choices that you have in the game by virtue of being so good.
Yes.
That's the thing. You can do whatever you like, right? But if something is super, super, super good, you're incentivized to use it.
Right.
People like, I hear lots of people talking all the time about like, oh, it's like, it's so boring when people use the meta stuff. And like, I never try to use meta. I just do whatever. And it's like, that's fine. If you enjoy that, that's okay. But for a lot of people, and I sort of fall like halfway between the two. Like, I don't always use the meta thing. I have been more recently because it's kind of interesting. And I'm sort of trying to prove a point as well. But there's definitely a part of me where like, if I go into raid and I use something that's like substandard, and then I'm in a situation where if I had the meta stuff that I would win, and then I die, and I'm just like, I was enjoying myself using the non-standard stuff, and then I lost in a fight where if I had the actually like good things that I know are good, I probably would have won, or at least maybe would have won. Like, me sitting there looking at my dead character on the end screen is definitely not fun. And like, would I have had more fun playing with the meta gear, even though the gear is less interesting? I might actually like still be playing the game and not be dead. You know, so there's that hard. I find that's a difficult thing for me. It's just like, I want to do interesting stuff, but I want the interesting stuff to also actually work, right? And like, me not to feel like I'm harmfully degrading my own experience by not choosing the good things, you know?
Right. Like, you're welcome to use the STM, you know, that's great. That's great that you like that. It's great that you want to do that. But let it be known that the game in of itself drives you to incentivize survival. Like, it's kind of the point of the game. It's like effectively how you win the game, like to at least have success. So you not choosing the optimal thing, like what we're saying is like the broken thing, in this case the bastion plate, is like you're doing yourself a disservice, and that's fine. You're welcome to do that. More bastion plates for me. But you know what I mean? It's just like, okay, like,
yeah,
go for it.
It's why people talk about meaningful choice.
Yes, yeah.
All right, these two things cost 10k. That thing has got armor rating of 5, and that's got armor rating of 2. That's not meaningful choice, right? You might pick one because of aesthetics or drip or whatever, because you think it's funny. Like, that's fine, but it's like, it's not meaningful choice in terms of like in-game performance, which is what most people are.
What the
doing,
game
right?
is measuring you on effectively.
Yeah, because you choose your ammo, you choose your armor, you choose the gun it's going to go in, you choose your optic, the laser, like all these different things have like various trade-offs. It's like, do I want the laser to be seen? Yes or no? Like, do I want a flashlight? Yes or no? Where's it on the gun? Like, that depends on how I'm going to peek. Like, there's so much complexity to the game. So then to just be like, oh, it's fine to have this one thing just be like viciously OP compared to everything else for the category. It's like, it just doesn't compare to the other things within the category, right? It's like, what are the alternatives to the Bastion plate? Oh, the one or the other, whichever one, the airframe or whatever, with like the slap plate on it. Okay, well, that's just like a straight downgrade because it's one class lower. Anything with the face shield is going to cause you to not be able to hear anymore. It's like, yeah, you can still get shot in the face. Like, just because there's downsides doesn't mean that it's not like strictly the best thing that there is. I don't know, like, it's tricky, yeah, it's just tricky. But yeah, some people don't see an issue with it at all, and I just think that's the wrong way of looking at it.
Well, like, in that case, I would almost rather just remove the other choices, because like, they're effectively meaningless to me. You know what I mean? I mean,
it's the same thing, right? You could, but like, it's the same thing.
Right. Someone says that the goal of survival PvP would be less common, which I find hilarious, because you're given, you bring into raid weapons. Like, why do you bring in raid weapons? Well, because there's scavs that have guns that shoot at you, so you need to defend yourself, right? And it's like, also players have weapons, so like, you need to defend yourself. So it's like, I'm not killing people because I'm killing people because they're gonna end my survival. You know what I mean? It's like why people don't often like taking chances, like especially in the early game. Man, people are so cunning in the early game. Like, you know how it is, like, oh man, bro, I just need to get my pocket watch. Meanwhile, he's trying to come off as a Timmy, and like behind the corner, he's like, it's like Tashanka hat, silence, shotgun of piranhas in it. It's like, I know what you're trying to do. You're not gonna fool me, you know. Like, later in the game, it changes completely, but it's like,
I think this is the thing, right? It depends, right? It depends what kind of player you are. It depends what you're doing, right? So early game, the goal is survival most of the time, because you need finding raid stuff, you need to complete your quest, you need to keep your resources, blah blah blah. Whereas like now in the late game, survival isn't the goal, right? It's like, it depends. It depends
becomes
on the
a lot
task
less meaningless
too.
because
you have infinite resources,
yeah.
And then when you die, it's easy to get back up. But like, even some of the quest design as well, it's like, I was doing long line, just people came in and asked me, why are you doing long line? I was just, I don't know, something to do. Like, we're just doing stuff. We're using these guns. We're completing a quest because it gives me a reason to actually go and like, find people, whatever. But like, long line, there's no punishment for death. So my goal was not survival. I think I died in 75% of my raids, because I would kill like 2 or 1 or 2, and then I'd be like, let's push the last guy. Let's just go for it, because like, I don't get anything for leaving. I get nothing for leaving, right? Like, I might get another kill if I stay. And in one of the raids, I ended up with 3 kills. I'm just like, okay, this is progression. Like, because that's what progression represents to me now, because my monetary costs are dealt with by the hideout and by Bitcoin and by my enormous cash vault, and because I can buy all the stuff on the traders, I don't need to worry about that stuff, and I can always buy more gear, right? I can always buy more Bastion plates.
It's kind of like you're future-proofing your next wipe, because you're getting It's like now you've done the work. Now you get to like level up your own personal skill, which
Mm,
will in turn help you next swipe when it comes to combat.
yeah.
Like when it actually matters. Like right now it doesn't matter, so you might as well like the next time you come into a 1v3, you know what I mean? You might like
Mm,
roll the dice a bit more because you're more like confident in your ability, or you feel more skilled, or you think that's less challenging. That's interesting. Okay, so
yeah.
one last thing for me, and then I'll shut up. Is someone else had commented. This isn't even like the stuff I want to get to. That's totally fine. Someone else had commented about again the Bastion plate. It says if it was OP, golden egg prices should reflect that it's not Nikita's fault people list golden eggs for 80k when they're really worth 200k each. Which like I guess we kind of already talked about this, so I guess it's kind of like my bad for bringing it back up in retrospect. But
No, it's
yeah,
valid.
it's just like there's definitely merit to what they're saying. Like when people sell gunsmith parts for like 5,000 rubles when they really should be worth like 500,000 rubles because it's a
Mm.
gunsmith item and that they just don't know any better. Like yeah, that's definitely true.
But like,
To,
imagine like it's the thing is, there's two parts to this, right? Again, it's supply and it is demand. And what is
yeah,
the supply side of the Bastion plate? Well, it's golden eggs, really. That's the supply side. And then demand side is people with infinite money. But just the fact that people have infinite money doesn't mean they'll pay an infinite price for the item, right? It's still
mhm.
based upon like where people will pay for stuff. So what ends up becoming important? What moves the needle in this case? Well, it's the scarcity of golden eggs. If you got a golden egg every 3 seconds, Bastion plates would cost about 3 rubles. Right? It doesn't like it only has an impact on like how much only the amount of money people have only has an impact on it to a certain extent. After some point, that stops
Mhm.
having any effect, right? If you 10 times all the money in people's stashes, golden eggs probably wouldn't go up that much, right? It's like golden egg value is based upon like innate trader value plus like what it's used for. People can also only use them once per reset.
Exactly.
So there's
Which
a
affects
constraint there already as well.
yes.
Yeah, so that affects the amount that people are buying because you can't buy 5 and use them all at once. Like you can
Yep.
stockpile them, but there's no point you buying 20 really
Yep. There's
because it's
only
going to
a
take you
number.
ages to
Yep.
use it. Right? Not many people can use it. So there's like it's a sort of constant drip feeding of golden eggs. But yeah, like my point stands. If there was a golden egg in every single box, they'd go to the trader value and get stuck there. If you delisted them from the trader, weren't able to, or they were 1 ruble at the trader, the price would go down a lot, like down to where the actual kind of if they make the supply infinite, it's like well not infinite, but just however many people can carry out, it'll just go down to that like low level. So it's like it's sort of to do with the amount of money people have, but also not. It's more about like the item, and this is where it kind of becomes complicated when you've got items that are rare but not that rare being the input. It's like you end up being driven by like whatever spawn rate BSG have set for that item. Like if you make golden eggs 10 times more rare, then you definitely would see Bastion, although the eggs go up to like 500, 600, 700k. And then there starts to become a point where people start going, oh, I don't know if I want to buy that actually. Whereas like that, we're not at that point right now. So it's complicated.
Yeah, it absolutely is complicated. And like the further complicated, it's like if I buy a Bastion plate off the trader reset via the golden eggs, and I go into raid and I die within the first minute, and I went to run another Bastion plate, what do I do? Well, I can't use the barter, and buying golden eggs and waiting for 4 hours till the reset isn't really beneficial to me either because I want a Bastion plate now. So I go to the market and I buy a Bastion plate off the market, right? And it's like that situation versus a different situation where I have either the golden egg route or I have just the straight up plate route, and it's like, well, whichever one's cheaper is like the obvious, the most economical thing to do. I would think, like, probably is the case, and depending on the price of those items, it's like you could be saving a lot of money or it could be about the same. Like it's very circumstantial, and because of the way the trader resets and everything interacts, like it's I don't know, it's just like it's actually super intriguing how much the traders play into the economy, like not
Yeah.
just their literal value that they sell items for, but like how they affect specifically the flea market and the economy as a whole. Like it's very intriguing how much that goes into it. Like
Yeah.
and actually the way the market's structured too is interesting because it's top down. Like I would think it's safe to say 90% of players sort by lowest price at the top, right? So if someone were to like just suddenly list 4 separate listings of an item, they'd like drive the price, the top listing gets things are constantly shifting in the listing. So like if someone just dumps a bunch, like 5 people separately dump different items and they all are one supply, because if you sell like a stack of supply, it gets listed in the same category. So like if
Yeah.
like if for some reason you wanted to like sabotage the market, you could just like list, I don't know, 5 or 10 ram sticks each individually, but just like one price under the other. So like you could drive the price of ram sticks down now. So then later you could maybe buy ram sticks for a lot cheaper to trade them in for the suppressor barter. I don't know, like maybe there's something there, but
There's definitely stuff you can do. Like there's definitely things you can do. Let's put it this way, right? There's a reason why things like this, there's certain things that you can do that are like banned in the real world. And there's a reason for this, because they work. Right? Whereas obviously Tarkov doesn't have any kind of like regulation or whatever, but like there's a ton of people who are doing. I saw there was a whole video from some guy, and he was basically like buying up items like golden eggs, things that people just buy like unquestioningly, just not thinking about it. And he was just like buying up the market just until it's really expensive. And then he would just list like 30 of them as a pack all at once at some high price and just keep buying the low stuff. And eventually someone will just come in and go, click yes. I think there was actually a good clip of Landmark, and he got caught out by this dude. And he was like, who is this guy? Like, what the hell? And he bought like 30 eggs all simultaneously. It was just like, what the hell, man? Like, what's going on? What is this guy? It was quite funny, because of now that the Friday raid's gone, now you could just buy stuff and resell it. So there's like all these like weird things that you can do to like trick people into buying it. It's funny. But like, yeah, guys like Landmark and, even some of us to some extent is just like, you just go in, click, buy, whatever. You're like gearing up. You're not really thinking about it. And like, yeah, you can get caught quite easily. And the money doesn't really matter, but you can easily find people buying these eggs for like 300k each or whatever. Like you buy 30 of them at like 300k, it's like you can make a ton of money doing stuff like that if you want to like manipulate the market. Obviously, you got to have some capital behind you and there's some risk to it.
Yeah.
It's it's crazy.
It's so interesting because it's like,
but it's quite funny because,
on one hand, and then it's like numbers on the other.
yeah, exactly. That's the whole thing. Like behavioral finance is like a whole like what's a field, and it's like fascinating. It's all about like interesting stuff, like does technical analysis actually work? People have all these lines like moving day average 60-90 whatever, it's like hit resistance, all this stuff. Like, does it only work because people think it works? Maybe. Like, you can't ever really prove it. It's like it's interesting. It's like if there's enough people following something, even if it doesn't actually mean anything, it starts becoming important. It starts becoming important because enough people act on those signals. It's like the whole thing's like circular. It's like crazy. Like behavioral finance is like really, really wild. It's like truly wild. And it applies in this game too. This is why it's so cool, because it's real people doing real things with real economic incentives. So people will do the same stuff here as they do in real life to try and get ahead or whatever. And again, this is why certain activities are banned IRL, because you'll literally go to prison if you try and do this stuff. And people do.
No, I've been locked up in Tarkov jail. Help.
Yeah, Nikita's going to put you in Tarkov prison.
Yeah.
Market manipulation. I think he secretly quite likes it. The fact that it's complete Wild West or whatever. It's like a safe place to have like as a Wild West. It's like just a video game at the end of the day. So it's quite interesting to see the outcomes of these things and see how people do get like scammed and stuff, because it's like, it's not real money. It's like, play money, whatever. So it's fine. But it's interesting to see those same outcomes with people like shady characters coming out and like scamming people and stuff. And it's the same thing. It mirrors the real world. It's like very, very, very interesting. It's very interesting, the whole thing. I love it. I really do like it.
Yep, that is one of the X factors, and like, it's kind of nice that it's coming back a bit more. But I really think there's some things that
we'll see.
I don't know. It's like if I want people to play the game, so and myself included.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see whether it works or not, and whether the next wipe's broken. It might be. It might not be. It's going to be fun no matter what. To be honest, like it'll only matter, in my opinion. It's just like my short take on the whole thing. I think it'll only matter really for the mid game, because after that, everyone will be able to buy the things anyway, and the stuff that's banned is banned, so you won't be able to buy that. So it's like this mid level of stuff. Like you need 15 first, and you need to not be at like level 3 traders, because there's like this gap there where you can kind of hop skip the progression. So maybe it won't matter too much, and it'll give people who get to level 15 a bit of a leg up, a later wipe. I'm not sure. So maybe I think it'll be fine. I don't think it'll have a massive impact. It's just going to have a big impact on like inflation and end game wallets, which I think is going to be quite high. It's just going to give people a lot of cash, so we'll get inflation earlier. But But yeah, I think it'll be okay. It'll still be fun. The wipe's still going to be great. No funny raid is still going to be overwhelmingly positive. No global limits is going to be overwhelmingly positive. Gunsmith is going to be 10 times better because of it. You'll be able to actually buy the item from the trader. It's not going to be sold out. You're going to go to Jaeger and there's going to be a 153 shotgun in stock because not everybody's brought them out. You'll be able to use the MP5 with a rail on the top with an optic that you've never been able to use for years and years and years and years because they're always sold out. Like this, it's just going to be, there's going to be so many, it's going to be like quality of life wipe in some ways, especially for the early wipe. And then we'll probably have tons of money. Hopefully they downgrade Bitcoin a little so it's not as high. And if they did those couple of things, then I think we're probably good.
All right. Tune in next week where BSG puts us on trial for market manipulation. Thanks everyone for tuning in as always. And we will see you all next week.
Bye-bye.